You're currently unmuted right now.
Pat?
Good evening, everyone.
Evening.
Are we live?
Great.
Can
Wonderful.
you hear me there?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, sounds good. I guess we will call.
Talk without.
Yeah, valid. Yeah, good point. All right. Well, we will call the public hearing of the Alton Budget Committee to order now at 6 p.m. on January 13th, 2021. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for attending. I would like to just start off real quick by saying if anybody is experiencing any technical difficulties throughout the duration of this meeting, please contact our IT department at 603-507-1002. We'll make that announcement several times throughout the meeting and a few more items as we move along here. We'll start off with roll call. Patrick O'Brien. Mr.
Reuben
Mitchell.
Wentworth.
Oh.
Dave Hershey. Reuben Parker.
Karen Curry-Tonoff.
And I think we have Mr. Mitchell on the line as well.
Yeah, I'm here, Pat.
Excellent. All right, a few housekeeping rules in terms of Zoom. Obviously, Josh will be, our IT director will be monitoring those folks from home and being able to mute and unmute as necessary. But those of us that are on the panel while we're not speaking, if you could just turn your microphones off to limit feedback and that kind of thing, that would be great. I guess we can start off with approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve. Dave Hershey.
Motion to approve by Mr. Hershey, second by Mr. Mitchell, if that's correct.
Rubens. Mr. Parker.
Oh, Mr. Parker. Okay. All right, all those in favor. Oh, Mr. O'Brien, yes. Mr. Wentworth.
Yes.
Mr. Hershey.
Yes.
Mr. Parker.
Yes.
Mrs. Karatonoff.
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yes.
All right. We will move on to the appointments section. We do have our emergency management director, Police Chief Ryan Heath here. He's going to speak more so on the town side. So we're going to get right into the school public hearing here, scheduled to start right at 6. And at this point, we will open up the public hearing. I do believe we have to have a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
All right, and I will second. Those in favor? Mr. O'Brien, yes.
Aye.
Mr. Wentworth?
Yes.
Mr. Hershey?
Yes.
Mr. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Karatonoff?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yep.
All right, the public hearing for the school is now open. Public input will be allowed on a first come, first served basis by pressing the raise hand button on the Zoom platform or by pressing *9 on your phone's keypad. Again, if you experience any technical difficulties, please contact the IT administrator at 603-507-1002. The documents we'll be reviewing tonight may be found on the town's website, www.alton.nh.gov, under the News and Announcements section under the Budget Committee Public Hearing Documents. I apologize. I did cut out there for a second. Do we have anybody that is interested in speaking tonight?
Wait a minute, Josh says that there is one person
Okay.
by telephone.
Welcome to the meeting. If you could just state your name.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening. I pressed enough buttons, so I think they actually got through, which is kind of a miracle.
Excellent.
My name is Richard Shea. I live at Roberts Cove Road in Alton. And I just had a brief statement, if I could. My wife and I are retired. We moved to New Hampshire 2 years ago. Like most retirees, we're on a fixed income. Budget-wise, we can cope with inflationary cost increases, at least so far, but we are very concerned about property tax increases, which seem poised to exceed the inflation rates by a substantial margin. We both regard education as vitally important. My wife was a school teacher for years and also a member of the Board of Education in our prior residence. But we don't understand why the proposed budget is more than 2.5 times the current inflation rate. We don't have the expertise needed to pass judgment on individual education budget line items, but we feel that in a $15 million+ budget, there should be possibility for additional savings. We don't know what mechanisms, if any, are available to the committee to push for a lower budget, but we do ask that every effort be made to obtain a reduction if possible, and any amount would help. And finally, I'd like to say that we do appreciate the Board of Education's practice of posting the teachers' contracts online. We found that to be very helpful. Thank you very much, and I don't know what button I need to push to get out of your hair here.
Do you know what that would be, Josh?
Mr. Shea, I certainly appreciate your input. I'm not sure if Ms. Stiles would like to speak specifically to the increases this year in particular, but I'm confident that the school board will take your input into consideration.
I'd be
Thank you very much.
I'd be happy to respond to that, Mr. Shea. I share your concern about tax impact and folks who are on fixed incomes. It is certainly is not easy. This year, we have had several increases that were beyond our control. And let me just state a couple of them for you because they were quite sizable. And even given these large increases, our budget without the high school tuition was up about 1%. We had a mandatory increase in our retirement costs for the New Hampshire retirement system, which is mandatory. That added almost $200,000 to our budget without any ability for us to change that number. Our health insurance was up considerably as well, with about $125,000 was the impact of that. In special education, the cost was up about $250,000 between the high school and the elementary school. However, as you and your wife probably know, being in education, special education, while we are budgeting for it now, we will not be using those funds for another year, and things can change dramatically. So what we have decided to do is, instead of putting that increase into the budget, we've taken out $200,000, and those funds will be taken from the Special Ed Expendable Trust should everything that we are planning for is needed. So we've tried to mitigate that. The largest impact to our budget has been the tuition to the high school. This year, because the tuition is based on attendance by Barnstead and Alton. Last year, that attendance rate was 50%. This year, Alton has 54.32% attendance and Barnstead has 45.68%. That slight increase of a little less than 5% has caused an increase of $343,340 to our budget. That one line is more of an increase than the entire Alton budget combined. It represents a 2.3% increase to our budget in one line because of the attendance rate. So we recognize that there are increases in the budget, but the majority and the largest amounts are required. They are contractual and they are required by law. We're not increasing staff. We've kept initiatives out. We are at a minimum because we recognize these large obligations to our building. So I hope that helps to answer at least some of your questions.
Yes, it does, and I'll tell you, it sounds pretty much the same as what we experienced in our previous hometown, with the major drivers being of the type that you don't have much control over. I do wonder if you have any expectation of additional federal or state funds that might not currently be accounted for, even though you probably couldn't include them in your budget since they're not guaranteed.
Right, and grant funding is considered a revenue, so we can't include that in the bottom line. We certainly can use it to offset costs. We receive Title I, Title IIA, Title IV, which is a very small grant. We, of course, get some monies for free reduced lunch. Don't know how that's going to work this coming year with the free and reduced lunch program with COVID is quite different than it has been in the past. We're certainly getting CARES money, some of the ESSER funds, which we are putting towards COVID, which have to be towards COVID-related expenses. The first one was for Alton was about $56,000, and we used every penny of that for COVID expenses to offset in the budget. We just received further funding in the second round. That was about $77,000. We used every penny of that, again, to offset COVID costs. Even with that, all of the additional expenses for COVID in this year, we still expended that by about $23,000. We understand that there's going to be a third round of funding that will be coming our way. We have no details on it, but our plan is that those costs will help again to offset costs that we have incurred, which could cause a savings at the end of this current fiscal year, which would help to offset the taxes for this budget, for the 21-22 budget. So we're watching our bottom line very, very carefully because we recognize that there is an increase for 21-22. And if we have any savings at the end of the year, those funds will be returned to the town to offset the taxes and not have it be as large. I've been in the district 5 years, and every year we have returned money so that anything anticipated as the tax rate for the following year is actually comes in lower because we are offsetting taxes with savings that we incur during the year.
Understood. Well,
I hear your concern, though. We're working very hard on that.
all right. Well, thank you very much for your efforts and for the information. And if you do have any surplus, I'd be happy to swing by and pick it up.
You and everyone else that I text. Thank you.
Pam, do you mind if I ask just a couple of quick questions?
Please.
You had mentioned that the ratio for the allocation of the cost for the Prospect Mountain High School was based on attendance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So if somebody is choosing to homeschool their child or children, okay, they would not be part of that allocation process?
Correct. Homeschool children are not part of what's called the ADM, the average daily membership.
Okay, great, thank you. The other question I had, and this follows up a little bit with Mr. Shea's question. You had mentioned the possibility of getting some money from Title I, Title IIA, and
Yep.
a handful of others, okay? Do you have a rough estimate as to what you might anticipate that to be, recognizing it's not a firm and, final quote? I mean, just a rough idea, whether that's based on what we've received in the past or your best estimate based on what the current circumstances are.
Our Title I is pretty consistent. We get about $90,000 and we pay for a percentage of the Title I staff salaries. The remainder of that comes out of the general fund because the grant doesn't cover all of it. We do get IDEA funds for special education, iSocial grant. Those, the IDEA is about $100,000. We pay for our school psychologist. We pay for our speech therapist, which again, we use those funds to not pull them from the general fund. We take them from IDEA. The Title II grant is only for professional development. That's about $30,000. And we help to offset the costs of, like we have a summer literacy institute for staff, staff training, but that must be used for professional development. Title IV is very small. It's like $1,000, and that's for special like enrichment things for students. ESSER funds are unknowable. They are 1 year they're here, 1 year they're not. There's more obviously because of COVID. Revenues are quite unknown. Our Medicaid used to be $130,000 or so a year. It's down to about $25,000 now because of the emergency rule that was put into place in August for the difference in what Medicaid will reimburse per different provider. So that has been dramatically cut. And our catastrophic aid is at about $40,000. So it varies from year to year, but our title grants, our federal grants, we allocate mostly for staffing because that's the biggest cost. And that way we don't have to put it in our general fund.
So of the numbers you provided, I just scribbled out some things. I'm coming up with about $250,000, $260,000 ballpark.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I have one last question, and that was with the COVID and schools being, or many of them going to remote learning, either kind of on a full-time basis or a hybrid basis, whatever process that is. Okay.
Yeah.
What's happening to the school lunch program? Are you under contract in terms of buying food, in which case we're paying for food that, in fact isn't being, delivered and distributed? Or are we able to eliminate that for those days that the schools are closed?
Well, I will tell you, I'm very proud of the fact that we are not in hybrid and we are not in full remote. Since the beginning of the year, we have been in person 5 days a week. 80% of our student population is in person every day. 20% is remoting in synchronously to their classroom. So our food service program is running like it does normally. The difference is that because students can't congregate in a lunchroom, all of our lunches are delivered to classrooms. But our lunch program is working every day. It's delivering meals. The kids have breakfast available. They have lunch available. Snack milk, no snack milk, not during COVID, but we do have breakfast and lunch. So that's running at a very good percentage. The difference this year is that because of COVID, the federal government has said that no children will pay for lunches. And so all lunches this year are free. We have really no guidance at this point as to what that's going to do to any funding that we normally get from free and reduced. Because right now there is no data for free and reduced. Everyone, no matter what their income, are receiving free lunches.
So then Okay, and I hate to use the pun, there's no such thing as a free lunch, okay?
You
But
bet.
by statute, I guess there is here, okay?
Right.
And that is, if the government is saying that, you know, the lunches are free,
Mhm.
and we don't know what we're going to get for reimbursement, so then we would anticipate an increase in that line item. And- right?
There is an increase in our food service line. Our food service director added an extra $70,000, 90,000. Hold on, let me just check that.
Oh, yeah, saw that, but attributed to not knowing what we're going to get for any type of contribution, if any, from the federal.
Correct, but that's in this year's budget. That's in the 1920, that's in
Okay.
this year's, I'm sorry, 2020, I'm a year behind. 2021 budget is where that's going to shake out. And that was not known when we made this budget a year ago. So we may have to find that money.
Yep. And to the extent there's any leftover food, okay, do you have an arrangement with the food bank, either here in town or Barnstead or, you know, some other town so that it doesn't get wasted? And I recognize some stuff is, you know, it's not practical, okay, but to the extent stuff is, are we utilizing that?
Well, our food service, though, purchases their food based on students signing up to have a hot lunch or hot breakfast. So, and our food service director, Sam Cowan, is truly a remarkable director. He doesn't have he doesn't have wasted food. He doesn't have that's not the kind of situation we have.
Great. Thanks, Pam. That was the last question.
No problem at all. No problem at all, Dave.
Thank you again, Ms. Stiles. Greatly
If I could add a
appreciate that.
comment, Chairman O'Brien.
Yes, of course.
And this is in response to Mr. Shea's question. I just wanted to add that I'm the school board representative on the budget committee and member of the Alton School Board. And the Alton School Board and the Barnstead School Board have been working together as the joint board at Prospect Mountain to look for savings to help reduce tax impact. And one of the things we've moved forward with is shared services. So starting next year, we'll be sharing a superintendent for all three schools, Barnstead Elementary, Alton Central, and Prospect Mountain. And while that does provide some savings in this budget proposed budget, unfortunately, the increases in retirement benefits and health insurance that Superintendent Stiles mentioned did offset that savings. But going forward, you know, that is going to have more of an impact as we look at more positions to be shared amongst the districts. And the flow out of that will, in addition, be purchasing power for supplies and other services that we hope to create savings with.
And that will be a $68,000 savings. So there is, you know, considerable savings there.
And that's a great point, Karen. I appreciate you bringing that up. That was actually something that came out of last year's budget committee meeting, I do believe, where, you know, we had talked about trying to perhaps share some services, and I'm sure you guys were talking about that long before we brought it up, but that was also a topic last year. So here we are a year later, and we're finally seeing those things fall into place. So I appreciate everybody's hard work on those things. That will certainly help in the long run. All right. Again, I just want to reiterate, if anybody has any public input, you can do so by pressing the raise hand button on the Zoom platform or by pressing *9 on your phone's keypad. Again, if you experience any technical difficulties, please contact our IT administrator at 603-507-1002. Do we have anybody on the line that wishes to speak?
Stand by.
Whenever we do get you on the line here, feel free to just state your name and you will be live.
asking them to unmute, but they are not unmuting themselves.
Is there anybody on the line wishing to speak?
There we go.
Yep, there is someone, Pat.
Okay. All right, if you raised your hand or pressed *9 to speak, you're on, and we're here listening to you. Go ahead and just state your name. Last and final call. Anybody looking to speak?
Okay, stand by.
Okay, standing by.
Okay, so somebody's there.
I recognize that laugh.
It's Loring.
There.
Hello?
There he is.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay,
Say your name.
this is Lauren Carr. I've got some questions on the school budget, the default budget. Hello?
Yep.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
On the tuition for the private sources under 1,200, 55, 630.
Mhm.
There's a minus $43,000.
Mhm.
Do we know what that is?
Yes, that is a tuition for out-of-district placement for the elementary school. And that is directly related to a student service that has been changed, that we anticipate will be changed.
Okay. So less of a student, in other words, like,
Correct.
okay. In the principal's account, 2410,
Yep.
51100.
Yeah.
Now, is a principal under multi-year contract, and is he entitled to a raise, but because it's in a default budget, you don't have the raise in there?
No, well, yes, the principal is in a 2-year contract. This is his 2nd year. And so that will be negotiated. And so without a contract, there is no raise that is put in there right now.
And the assistant principal's the same? Because
Same
that's
thing.
both lines,
They're on
right?
the same cycle.
But in the budget, if the budget goes through, he would get a raise.
That's
Because of
correct.
the-
We,
because
yeah,
of the
that's in the salary adjustment line in the superintendent section, which
Yeah.
is not in the default, but in the operating budget, that's where it's calculated.
Yeah, where he'd get the raise, okay.
Correct.
Under the transportation lines,
Yep.
2721, 55, 190.
Yep.
Is that the increase of 1,900 and the 7,900, 557 and 590? Is that because of a multi-year contract?
Well, Loring, it is. And what I was going to bring forward to the committee tonight is that we're going to need to amend our default budget because the transportation is a multi-year contract. It is a 5-year contract. And I do understand, excuse me, I do understand that the annual increase in a multi-year can't be in the default. So that is going to impact the default, and actually it's going to increase it by $5,010. So we're going to have to amend the default number that's in Article 2, but that will account, when you see this document at the deliberative session, you will see $0 increases in those 3 lines.
Okay. And the Prospect Mountain High School costs,
Yes.
is that all? Instead, a because they don't have any say in the actual number. I mean, it's like a contractual thing that the town has signed, the two towns have signed to that multi-town board.
You broke up there, so I didn't get all of it, and Karen might want to answer this too, but I'm assuming what you're asking is about the percentage in the tuition rate?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, in the joint maintenance agreement, there is language that says that instructional costs have to be divided by the average daily membership. Average daily membership is determined on each year. Average daily membership. On October 1st, the percentage rate was Alton was 54.32% and Barnstead was 45.68%. So they took their total budget of $8 million or so, and we did the calculation, which gives us quite an increase of over $300,000 just with that 5% increase. It's part of the JMA.
So we don't have any say in that really at all.
No, none.
So whatever that board any number that board comes up with, we're obligated to pay it.
Well, it's the high school budget, and so that they're run by the board. Karen's on that board. Whatever the board decides is the budget for the high school, we have to pay the percentage per student.
Yeah, we can't put
And
any.
Well, that
Yeah.
budget is also reviewed by a joint budget committee from Barnstead and Alton, which is made up of budget committee members. So
Yeah.
that's how the towns are looking at that Prospect Mountain budget also.
But they can't propose any number to you people, that joint board. It's your number, period. They can say it's twice as high as it should be, and you can say, well, thank you, and you still.
That joint budget committee can make recommendations, but a lot of times it goes back to the deliberative session or Barnstead's school meeting to make those final decisions.
And just to interject here, the Prospect budget overall this year is down. Overall, it's down $42,575. So it looks like they put together a very fiscally responsible budget. It just happens that because of the attendance breakdown, if it were still at 50-50, it would be very beneficial to us. But because we are at a higher percentage, we really took a hit this 21-22 year.
Yeah. It seems strange to me that the default budget, the way the default budget should work, it would apply to that, or that's high school also, but I guess it doesn't. So that's, I guess, the flaw of the contract we signed with Barnstead. Okay, that's my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And now then you're going to do the town next.
And thank you, Superintendent Stiles. Again, your insight is invaluable through these. Okay. Again, if anybody would like to speak, utilize the raise hand button on the Zoom platform or *9 on your phone's keypad. And any technical difficulties, please contact 603-507-1002. Do we have anyone in the queue?
Yeah, no one in the queue.
No,
Okay, it is 6:36. What is the board's wishes?
With regards to what?
In regards to the public hearing, would we like to keep the public hearing open? Are we satisfied with?
No, let's move forward unless somebody happens to join us, you know, but, you know, to sit here and wait for a half an hour for something that may not happen doesn't seem productive.
I completely agree. I just don't want to be the only one to make the decisions in regards to the public hearing. So I just wanted your folks' input.
Mr. Chairman, to make a motion to close the school public hearing at this point. 6:33, is it?
6:37.
7:37.
No,
6:37.
Okay, motion by Mr. Wentworth. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Parker for the second. All those in favor? Mr. O'Brien, yes. Mr. Wentworth?
Yes.
Mr. Hershey?
Yes.
Mr. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Karatonov?
Yes.
And Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Okay, the school public hearing is now closed.
Patrick, could I just ask a clarifying question?
Of course.
When will the budget committee vote on the warrant articles for the school?
I believe we did warrant articles at the last meeting. I was not present.
We did some of them.
Okay.
But we did not have the collective bargaining agreements from the high school at that time.
Okay.
And we have had the change in Article 2 for the default number. There's also one more change for the athletic field. There had been a conversation about the amount asked for from the high school that I told them I would report back on. I have the answer for that. And the last one is the boiler one that we've decreased considerably. And so those five will need another vote from the budget committee.
Okay. Liz, do you know the deadline on those off the top of your head?
The deadline for the vote?
Yeah, for our vote. Is there a deadline for our vote?
Well, normally it would be done after the public hearing is closed.
Okay.
We're looking at, posting out and about in the town and everything here within, I think it's 10 days or so.
Okay.
I don't know.
If it's relatively procedural to do it after the public hearing, I am perfectly okay with that.
Okay.
And let me get to those. So, Miss Stiles, do we have the most up-to-date copies of those, or is that?
Yeah, you do. They're in your packet.
Okay.
And you'll see them. They're clearly labeled warrant articles.
That's the back of the packet.
White paper.
Okay. If somebody in person there wouldn't mind reading your copy, I have an electronic copy. I just don't know if it's the most recent.
Are we talking about Article 2, the operating budget first, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And if I could I just interject that the default number is going to be 15,590,580.69.
So it's going to be $15,590,580 and how many cents?
69.
69.
Did you say 16 or 15?
15.
15.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the operating budget for the Alton School District. Shall the Alton School District raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriation by special warrant articles and other appropriation voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant, or as amended by vote of the first session, for the purposes set forth therein totaling $15,568,194.20. Fiscal note, the amount of $4,521,366.20 is the net appropriation for Prospect Mountain High School operating budget, which is included in the gross budget amount listed above, and recommended by the Joint Maintenance Agreement, JMA Budget Committee. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $15,590,500, I thought I wrote $80.69, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments required by previous action of the school district or by law, or the governing body may hold special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13 X and XVI to take up the issue of revised operating budget only. This warrant article does not include appropriations and any other warrant articles. The Alton School Board recommends $15,568,194.20 by a vote of 5-0.
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Mr. Wentworth, second by Mr. Parker to approve Article 2 as amended with the new default budget number. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none, we'll call to a vote. Mr. O'Brien, yes. Mr. Wentworth?
Yes.
Mr. Hershey?
Yes.
Mr. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Karatonov?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
All in favor? It is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Article 3, does that require?
Yes.
It does. Okay.
Do you have is that the amount that we see in front of us?
That's correct. Yes, that's right.
Mr. Chairman, do you need each of these articles read as printed, or can I just make a motion to approve Article 3? That wasn't the answer I was looking for.
Yeah. My apologies. I swear I don't have a dog. I would say that we need to include at least the dollar amounts.
Anybody want to make that motion? You want me to read it? Gentlemen
Sure.
and ladies.
You did such a great job.
Chairman, I make a motion to approve Article 3, the collective bargaining agreement, Prospect Mountain Teachers Association. See if the school district vote to approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the Prospect Mountain School Board, JMA, Alton Barnston, and the Prospect Mountain Teachers Association, with calls for the following increase in salaries and benefits and the current staffing levels. Year 2021, 2022, appropriate $72,922. Estimated total increase, $134,245. And to further raise and appropriate the sum of $72,922.00 for the 2021-2022 fiscal year, such sum representing 54 32/100% of the total additional cost of the $134,245.00. Contribute to the increase in salaries and benefits over those of the Appropriation Act, current staffing levels paid in the fiscal year in accordance with the most recent collective bargaining agreement. The adoption of this article shall be contingent upon both Alton, 54.32%, and Barnstable, 45.68% district approving the cost items and raising and appropriating their respective sum of money to fund the cost items. The JMA board recommends $72,922 by a vote of 8-0. The Alton School Board recommends $72,922 by a vote of, which we do not have in our packet. The Alton Budget Committee recommends. At this point, you have to take a vote, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, I do have, actually. I guess I must have an updated form. The Alton School Board recommends $72,922 by a vote of 5-0. And I will second your motion. Motion by Mr. Wentworth, second by myself. Those in favor, Mr. Wentworth?
Yes.
Mr. Hershey?
Yes.
Mr. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Karatonov?
Yes.
And Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
And Mr. O'Brien, yes. All right, Article,
You don't need to do Article 4, but Article 5 is collective bargaining for the para educators.
okay. Seeing as I do have the most up-to-date form, I'll make a motion to approve Article 5, collective bargaining agreement, Prospect Mountain Educational Support Paraprofessionals Association, to see if the town school district will vote to approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between Prospect Mountain School Board, JMA Alton Barnstead, and the Prospect Mountain Educational Support Paraprofessionals Association, which calls for the following increase in salaries and benefits at the current staffing levels. Year 2021 to 2022, appropriate $40,984. Estimated total increase, $59,170. 2022, 2023, $53,458. Estimated total increase, $74,050. And to further raise and appropriate the sum of $40,984.00 for the 2021 fiscal year, sum representing 54 and 2/32% of the total additional cost of $59,170.00 to the increase in salaries and benefits required by the new agreement over those that would be paid at current staffing levels. The adoption of this article shall be contingent upon both the Alton 54.32% and Barnstead 45.68% districts approving the cost items and raising and appropriating their respective sums of money to fund the cost items. The JMA board recommends $40,984 by a vote of 8-0. The Alton School Board recommends $40,984 by a vote of 5-0. The Alton Budget Committee is us.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by myself, second by Mr. Wentworth. Any further discussion on Article 5? We'll call to a vote. Mr. Wentworth,
Yes.
Mr. Hershey,
Yes.
Mr. Parker,
Yes.
Ms. Karatonov,
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yes.
Motion's approved.
Great.
Okay.
Okay, you don't need to do number 6. Number 7 was discussed at the last meeting. The only difference is after we put this out to bid and we received our bids and have approved them, instead of the warrant being for $210,000, the warrant is for $85,000. And this will be sufficient to complete the project given the bid that was approved. And that's the difference in the warrant.
Okay, so just for clarity, the new number is not 210, it is 85.
Correct. And the
Okay.
85 is what you have in front of you.
Yes, okay, perfect. We have a motion on Article 7.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, to see if the
You want to
school-
read it?
Yeah.
I do have, no, I have the right vote on this. The only one I didn't have the right vote on was the collective bargaining agreement.
Gotcha, okay. All right.
Article 7.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to read it for you, that's all. To see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $85,000 to replace its 30-year-old boiler with two 1,000 rate of heat measurement output boilers, a volume water heater and mixing valve, two programmable thermostats at the Alton Central School. The Alton School Board recommends $85,000 by a vote to 5-0. And here we are, the Alton Budget Committee.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Wentworth, second by Mr. Mitchell. Do we have further discussion on Article 7? We'll call to a vote. Mr. Wentworth,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hershey,
Yes.
Mr. Parker,
Yes.
Ms. Karatonov,
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien, yes. All in favor?
Patrick, at the last meeting, the board unanimously voted on Article 8 and Article 9. There were no changes, so
Okay.
I'll set. So the last one is Article 10. It's about the field. There had been a question from this board as to why the apportionment did not mirror the technology expendable trust of that 54.32%. And instead for the field, it was 50-50. The JMA calls for all physical plant expenditures split 50-50 between Barnstead and Alton. It is not based on average daily membership. So the field correctly is at 50-50, and the technology trust, which could be based on instructional needs, things like that, is based on ADM. So that was the explanation for Article 10. The 50-50 is correct, and we would just need a vote on that.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't here at the last meeting, so I'm not sure. Whomever had the question, if that was sufficient follow-up, I'll leave that up to you.
Yeah, I think it was. I think we voted yes, but you had a general question.
Okay.
Right. It was unanimous, yes, but it was a different number.
Okay. All right. Is there anything further on the school budget?
The only thing, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make note on the updated or not updated, it does not have that in that budget committee that it was a vote in favor of that $15,000. So you might want to call for a new vote on that.
That'd be appreciated because the amount that you voted was different and was actually higher than what is proposed for the 50-50 split. You had approved it at the 54% split, so it was a higher amount.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve Article 10, or that we recommend Article 10, PMHS Athletic Field Capital Reserve Fund, to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $15,000.00 to be added to the Prospect Mountain High School Athletic Field Capital Reserve Fund previously established. Said sum representing 50% of the total appropriation of $30,000 and no cents. And further, that the appropriation shall be contingent upon both Alton and Barnstead 50% school districts adopting the article and appropriating and transferring their respective sum of money. The JMA board recommends by a vote of 8-0. The Alton School Board recommends $15,000 by 5-0. And the Alton Budget Committee.
Second.
Motion by myself, second by Mr. Wentworth. Further discussion on Article 10. Hearing or seeing none, we'll call to a vote. Mr. Wentworth?
Yes.
Mr. Hershey?
Yes.
Mr. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Karatonov?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yep.
Excellent. All approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate the process.
Thank you for joining
Can I
us.
just ask, before you go, can I just ask a quick question? Sorry, back on Article 5. The math of the appropriation amount compared to the estimated total increase doesn't seem to come out to that 54.32%. I don't know if I'm looking at it wrong or.
Karen, is this something that you want to answer? This is collective bargaining. I'm going to do some quick math here.
I don't have the final version actually in front of me because I missed the last meeting.
But so the total for 21-22, it shows a estimated total increase at 59,170. And if I multiply that by the 54.32, I get 32,140. And it looks like the 22-23 is off a little bit too.
Oh. Well, if we can go with your approval, we can amend this at the deliberative if you're willing to do that. And I will check with this. This is what the high school sent us, so I'll check back with the high school and find out about these numbers. And if we need to make a change, we can do it at the deliberative.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Is the board collectively okay with that decision?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank you for catching that, Mr. Parker.
yes.
Okay. Anything else on the school budget? Okay, I guess we will, let me just double check here. We will move on to the public hearing for the town budget. And I did just,
Thank you, Pam.
thank you again.
Thank you.
All right. I just want to open this up by saying that 2020 has brought forward some unprecedented challenges to our small community, and maintaining the level of service to operate and function could not have been accomplished without the dedication and passion of all of our town employees. Despite the ongoing pandemic and the uncertainty for 2021, the department heads were asked to create a budget allowing for no more than a 5% increase. And most departments were able to accomplish that goal. There were, however, some large increases that we were not prepared for at the beginning of this budget cycle. One of those expenses was the massive increase in New Hampshire retirement, which was also brought up in the school budget, representing a $239,000 increase alone. And that is the plan that's offered to all municipal employees. At the end of the budget season, these increases totaled over 7% in the town's budget from last year. Realizing that 7% is a fairly strong increase for a single year, and that many are struggling to make ends meet through this pandemic, the proposal was made to lower the overall budget by $200,000 to remain at the original 5% increase limit. We will hear a report tonight from the selectmen on this topic. As I understand, there has been some developments there. While it is hard to define the term need, since it's nearly different in almost everyone's eyes, what we can define is the level of service our community expects. And as we make these difficult decisions, we must keep that fact in mind. It has been my goal in leading this committee to support the needs of the community while maintaining a reasonably balanced budget year over year, all while providing the level of professional services our community has come to know and expect. I personally want to thank the department heads and all of the employees for their efforts over this past year and the year in front of us. In maintaining some level of normalcy over the past year, their efforts have truly been Oops, sorry, I'm cutting
Breathtaking.
I'm cutting out. Sorry, am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, sorry. I'm not sure where I left off, but 2021 will hopefully
The efforts were considered is where you left off.
exemplary. 2021 will hopefully offer some relief, but we must stay positive and, and most important, stick together. I do believe we also have a report tonight from our emergency management director, Chief Heath, if you'd like to come forward.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. And just echoing some of the sentiments that the chairman had already said, obviously 2020 has been an unprecedented year for the entire country. Alton and the emergency management team, along with all the department heads and the board of selectmen, have worked diligently to make sure that we comply with all of the guidelines that are being passed down from a federal and a state level. In working through this and setting these guidelines, obviously there has been a lot of unanticipated expense, a lot of which in 2020 has been offset through the CARES Act funding. The town of Alton received $126,000 in CARES Act funding at the federal level this year that has helped offset a lot of our unanticipated expenses. Expenses, just to give you an example, that you wouldn't really think going into this. One big hit that we took was in the recycling center. With the uptick of all the transporting of the waste and the recyclables, at one point there was estimated overruns of $60,000 to $80,000 in the solid waste budget due to COVID-related expenses. That's something on the top that most of the community members and a lot of employees didn't see as being a challenge for us. But we faced a lot of new challenges this year, and we've done a wonderful job as a community to overcome those challenges, and we look forward to 2021. But unfortunately, 2021 right now isn't showing a lot of promise out of the gate, meaning that I know a lot of people had hoped that 2021 would strike. It'll be a new year, new time, and we can move right on. That's not going to be the case right now. The rollout on the vaccines has been slower than anticipated. We're just now getting the Group 1A vaccines out. A lot of people in the town and first responders haven't even been vaccinated for the second time yet. Then it needs to go through all the rest of the transitions to get out to the general public. We're still trying to achieve herd immunity. That's something that's going to take a while. Right now, the estimates vary depending on who you talk to and which experts are providing the information. But realistically, we're looking at being in this climate right now with the pandemic through the better part of the summer into fall. So most likely, we need to be prepared. And I can't say that with any great deal of certainty. It's an educated estimate based on the information that's pouring in daily. I spend most of my days fielding emails, as a lot of the other emergency management team is doing as well, both at the federal and state level, trying to digest all of this information coming in. But the information coming in the manner in which it's being presented lends us to believe, and we had an emergency management meeting today, and we all concurred with the fact that we are looking through the better part of summer into fall, before we start seeing a little bit more normalcy within the community. With that is going to come added expenses and unforeseen expenses that we have to have some prepared plan for. And when we went into this budget season, in 2020, we didn't have the opportunity to budget for this stuff. We didn't know that what we were going to be encountering. Now we have an idea of what the world today looks like for us in our community. With that, we took the tight restrictions, and I say we, meaning all the department heads, along with emergency management, took those tight restraints and did the best we could to budget within those constraints, but also meet the needs not only of our individual departments, but what the unforeseen expenses and what COVID is doing to our expenses and what we need to be prepared for. We did that 2020 moving forward. I know now there's some discussions of changing that, but that's at a point now where we're looking at the bottom line numbers as they've been carried down, and that percentage seems to be a little high for certain people and certain boards. But with that taken into consideration, we went through an entire process line by line with both boards, and line by line, all of those figures made sense. And they made sense based on the needs of the individual departments and also what they might perceive for added expenses going into 2021 for COVID. Right now, there are no federal or local funds that are on the horizon coming down. You know, when this first came into 2020, we had a lot of prepared notice that funding was going to be coming down for individual towns and municipalities. That is now shut down. There's no talk, there's no mention of a new round of funding. Right now, municipalities are being cautioned to budget. When we went into 2020, we only had emergency management had $3,000 in a response and preparedness fund. Going into 2021, we only budgeted for $10,000 more. The rest of it is being absorbed through the operational budget. We do have one warrant article for $40,000. But out of that $40,000, there's $25,000 of that, roughly 25, is just for the greeting position that we had to, put into place that isn't covered in any operating budget, so that we could control the flow of personnel coming in and out to make sure that there's no congregation in the hallways, and what a lot of businesses have had to do. Somebody just to orchestrate the guidelines and the policies moving in for the general public and for the employees within the building. So these are some things that I thank you for the opportunity to speak and to address the board. But these are things that I felt and the emergency management team felt were important to get out there when we start talking about the funding and what we're going to be looking at going into 2021. So, thank you very much.
Just a couple of questions.
Sure.
As far as the second vaccination goes, I would think that that group of people must be within a day or two of their second round.
No, our first vaccination round in this area happened yesterday because I took mine. So our next second vaccination, the first round that took it is scheduled right now for February 8th. So that's where we're at right now with the vaccine. And there are some other people in different parts of the state that got it a little bit earlier, but the rollout has been slower than anticipated.
Wow. Because I know several groups that have completed their second vaccination.
Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Wasn't it medical people were first?
Well, medical personnel and first responders were in that same.
Yeah, they're in the same group.
pack, but different areas got their vaccines first. And again, it came in down to distribution, storage of the vaccines. That's all played a big key issue, and how long it would take for them to be able to distribute throughout the state, and who got what and what counts up front.
I wish I had known that, because there are some institutions that were scrambling to find people, okay, before their allocation expired.
Mm-hmm.
So that's unfortunate.
It is.
So, wow. Now, the other question I had, as far as those personnel goes, to, the greeter and so on, I'm assuming all of that's temporary, whether it's 8 months, 12 months, whatever it is, but it's not a permanent position.
Correct. And we went into that with the thought of maybe 2 to 4 months, and here we are almost a year later.
Sure.
With that in place. And again, we're anticipating that we're going to be at least looking at this for the next 6 months or more.
So are you guys squared away for your second shots?
Yes. Any other questions?
Thanks.
I'll
Thank
be
you, Chief.
sticking around too, if something else comes up during the hearing.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I don't know if you've opened up this yet to the regular part of the meeting before we get into the public hearing, but I do have a few comments that need to be brought before the Budget Committee for the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
As most of you folks know, the budget got presented to you at $8,327,000. Might be off a few cents there. After my board went back through, actually got the final numbers from the administrator and finance officer, which my board, most of the members did not follow the totals down when we approved each department, all of a sudden had price shock. That's why it came to the Budget Committee with the recommendation of 3 against the Selectmen's budget, 2 for the Selectmen's budget. Initially, it was a 5, 4, and 0 against. But all of a sudden, the majority of the board had second thoughts. I argued for 4 weeks to keep the budget where it was. Could not get the majority of the board that voted against it after they gave it to you in full to change their opinion. And as we kept going down this road and it was being presented to the townspeople, having the Selectmen's budget or Budget Committee's budget, which it starts at the Selectmen's first, showing 3 against and 2 for the budget at the $8,327,000, it was doomed for failure to go to a default budget. So this week's meeting, Monday night, I asked 2 of the members that made the motion to vote for 2% or $209,000 less to reconsider. That motion failed on those 3. Then I asked them if they would open it up again for a vote so the rest of the board could vote on it, because as chairman, my employees, which I'll say my employees, the town employees, they have worked diligently. They have worked proudly. I've never seen a year that I can say I'm 100% proud of every department in this community. They might have grumbled at sometimes. We asked them to do things when this pandemic started, but they soldiered up, they went on, they did the job, and they came out smiling. Every time I saw them this year, everybody was in a good mood. We all had the pandemic on our minds, some of us more so than others. But these employees this town had this year really showed their true colors. They stepped up, and every time the Board of Selectmen asked for something to be done, it was done within a day. And I couldn't be any prouder than a bunch of people than other my own employees at the store, because everyone worked here hard. And I'm sorry I had to come down to a budget and say, do I approve the budget I've been fighting hard for, or do I go for a lesser amount so all our employees can have a pay raise this year? Because if this goes to a default budget, the employees that work so hard for the community, the selectmen, the taxpayers, their department heads will have no reward next year. So at Monday night's meeting, I asked the other gentleman who voted for the original budget to go with a 2% reduction of $209,000. I was not proud of doing that, but I was more proud to make sure our employees get their pay increases this year. I understand the EMT's position, but I'd hate to see the Board of Selectmen and the Budget Committee be at such odds. Normally, it's the other way around. Normally, the Selectmen's budget is much higher than the Budget Committee. Very seldom do you ever see it reversed. In our last week's meeting, I know both motions failed on the floor, which is very unfortunate. That was my other move for the Monday night's meeting. So I'm asking tonight, and I know the chief brought this same scenario to us Monday night, and he wasn't hoping for the outcome that I came up with. But I still think our employees are most important. I worked since Monday night on a budget to come up with 2% or $209,000. Presented it to the town administrator today. I did not accept her to agree with it or disagree with it. I told her to use it as they would, because I figured I'd help out the department heads. Because the selectmen's orders were, tell the department heads to come up to their 2%. If you look at a building department's budget, the planning department's budget asking for 2%, we're only talking a $109,000 budget. So if they take 2% off, the building inspector was willing to go on unemployment for 2 to 3 weeks. So wasn't the town assessor. So wasn't the planning board, planning director. What does that say for your employees? And for the selectmen to say take 2% off. So I had to look at some of the larger departments. The chief was quite generous with what he recommended, because I didn't take as much out as he's recommending too, that he gave to Liz. The highway department, I did go with most of their recommendation except for all of it. The fire department, I think I might have went a little heavier than what the chief there did. But Monday night, I said, if we're going to cut the budget by $209,000, I cannot recommend new positions. We had 2 new positions in the town this year. One was for a full-time EMT, and one was for a truck driver. My board does not know my recommendations for the $209,000 cut. They will not know that until a week from Monday. And I guess they won't be my cuts, they'll be the town administrator's cut, because I gave her my list and said, do with what you want with it. But I'm asking tonight, hopefully the Budget Committee will go along with the recommendation of the Board of Selectmen that they asked you a week ago to reduce the budget by 2%, which amounts to the amount of $209,000. Because if we're at odds and we go to the town deliberative session, no matter how much we try, the deliberative session only represents normally about 10% of the people that vote, if we're lucky. And this year, we have a lot more folks home that did not go to winter to Florida or winter down south. And normally, with the way we're set up with SB2, that's where a lot of the no votes come in at. So I'm asking you folks maybe to reconsider last week's and take the selectmen's recommendation of 2% less budget than was presented to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wentworth, and I appreciate your input. I completely agree. I don't want to discuss this. I just assume let everybody think on this. Let's get through the public hearing, and we'll kind of circle back to this afterwards.
Hey, Pat, before you do that, what was the new number?
Mr. Wentworth, do you have the updated final bottom line number?
No, but I will for you in a second. It'll take me a minute.
Here. It's $8,378,183.
That's the regular, that was the budget presented fully to you folks, not with the less than 2%. Brock, were you asking for the 2% less?
Yes, please, Ruben.
Would that be Article 8,099,570?
No, that's the default. This is the number in between. It's not on the
I
document.
can get it for you. Minus 209,454 equals 8,168,729.00.
Thank you.
Brock, did you hear that?
Yes, I did, Ruben. Thank you.
Thank Liz. She got it for you quicker than I did.
Thank you, Liz.
You're welcome.
Okay, at this point, if nobody has anything else to add, we can open up the public hearing. I'll make a motion that we open the public hearing for the town budget at 7:17 PM.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor? Mr. Wentworth?
Aye.
Mr. Hershey?
Hey, sorry, I was reading the article. Sorry.
Mr. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Caratono?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Okay. The public hearing is now open. Public input will be allowed first come, first serve by pressing the raised hand button or by pressing *9 on your phone's keypad. If you experience any technical difficulties, please contact our IT administrator at 603-507-1002. Again, the documents may be found on the town's website, www.alton.nh.gov, under News and Announcements in Budget Committee Public Hearing Documents. Is there anybody on the line that would like to speak? Do we have a way of identifying which individual we're allowing to speak, whether it's a phone number or a name?
Lauren Carr. Trying to get it on mute.
Mr. Carr?
Wait a minute.
Lauren, you're on mute.
Hello?
Okay, there you
Welcome.
go.
Okay, all right. Just to go back to the school one for a second, how would the people on the telephone know what article, when you said, well, we already voted on Article 8 and Article 9, how would people on the phone know what the values were in those articles?
So those items were voted on at a previous meeting. I
Yes.
understand that these items were not voted on because they were waiting on final numbers. And I do
Yeah.
believe those numbers were provided with the Budget Committee documents.
And how does someone get those over the phone?
I thought you picked up your hard copy yesterday or today.
Pardon me? If I was on the phone, you have to disclose the numbers, correct?
So,
This
Well,
meeting,
I don't believe we voted on them tonight, so
I know, but you
we voted on in the
didn't,
previous meeting.
but you didn't disclose them. To those on the telephone, you just said, well, we voted on those. How do the people that are just on the telephone know what the numbers were?
they're on our homepage of the website.
If they're on the phone, you said you can answer, you can participate with your telephone. How do those people on the telephone know what the numbers were on the school budget on number 8 and 9?
Well, I guess they could ask, right?
Well, don't you think it's your obligation to disclose them?
Well, those items were not on our topic list for tonight, so there was no specific reason to discuss them.
Yes, that's what you have to do at a public meeting. You have to disclose the numbers. You have to disclose the numbers. It's like saying, well, we already voted on the operating budget, and you won't tell the people what the numbers were.
Okay, stand by. I will go right back to that.
What he's telling you is that it's a public hearing, you're supposed to disclose.
And then they should have been read, yes. They should have been read.
It's a public hearing.
Yep.
That's what they're
That's
trying to
right. If I'm on the computer, I can see the numbers, but if I'm just on the phone, I don't see the numbers.
Yeah,
Well,
so do we,
you can address that. I guess you can address that later, but I just wanted to bring that up.
Mr. Chairman, he is right. Number 8, even though it's a discontinuation of expendable trust, you still have to read those numbers.
Okay.
And then Article 9 was the other one I believe Mr. Carr brought up.
Okay.
And that should have been read, where that is asking to create an expendable trust.
Okay.
So we should go back and reopen the school hearing after you get through this one here. If
Okay.
we can get through it.
We can do that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Now, on the town budget, on 4194-011, there's an increase there from 78,524 to 139,852. Can you tell me what that is?
I'm sorry, Laura, you're gonna have to slow down for me to know that number of what department.
4194-011.
Yes.
yep, wages.
Yeah. 78,524 to 139,852. And then to this year, okay, then it's going, that was between those years. Then it's going up. It's changing from 139 to 116,093.
Yep,
The department head, Mr. Carr,
Yeah.
can you hear me? The
Yeah.
department head had put in for an additional member at first, which the board did not approve. And then one of their part-timers last year went to full-time. So that's the discrepancy. That's why your part-time went down from 49,000 to 13. Because the
Oh.
person is gone into full-time, plus they cut a position.
Okay,
new
so a
position.
transfer from part-time to full-time, the transfer up, right?
Correct.
And now it's gone down because of a different person?
There was a suggestion of a new person that was not approved by the selectmen. A new position. Which was cut by the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, and then from this year, 139 to 116? It went down?
This year, the 139 is the proposed from the department head with that new position.
Yeah,
And the 160 is the selectmen's budget for 2021 without that position.
okay, and they didn't add anybody in part-time, so is it just less hours the selectmen are considering, or is it just a lesser salary?
So the part-time person went full-time in, what was it, 2019? In 2019. So this represents 2020 represented that full-time position
Yeah,
as 2021. Yeah, she went, oh, sorry, that's wrong. She went to full-time in 2020. Oh, okay.
20.
Right, in the middle of the year, so it wasn't represented till this now budget, the 2021, sorry.
I guess my question is, why, if the department had 139, why did the selectmen go to 116?
Lori, well, what happened was when the Parks and Rec department came in to see us, she asked for a new position to be created. And the Board of Selectmen did not recommend that. So we took out the salary of what the new person would have been at 139. We took out that position, brought it back down to 116. The increase from the 78 up would be that a part-timer took a full-time position that we had open, and they moved up into that, so it lowered the part-time position for this coming year.
Okay,
It has nothing to do with the Parks and Rec director's salary. This is all the grounds salaries. And they were requesting a new position. We did not recommend a new position.
okay. On, 4220. The fire equipment testing, 453. I'm sorry, 600, I'm on the wrong number. 600. The fire hydrant rental.
So per the justification on that one, it is payments to the Alton Waterworks for rental and maintenance of 67 hydrants at a cost of $150 per hydrant times the 67 hydrants in the community.
Okay, 67.
That is the number that is listed on the justification.
Okay, now if we can stay on that line, but flip over to 4331. 803 for the water department.
It's 943.
803, 4331, 803.
Last page.
It looks like the cost is $6,000 for fire hydrants. But yet the fire department is charging us $10,000?
No, the water department is charging the fire department $10,000 for the
Yeah.
rental use of fire hydrants to make sure they're staying active and for maintenance. They might not spend all the $10,000 for the maintenance on those fire hydrants every year, but this is also kind of based out like a user's fee, Lori. So there's money there to fix hydrants and the possibility if we ever have to. And I think 2 years ago, we ended up fixing almost 7 hydrants in town, 4 of which were out of service for over a year. That line wasn't overexpended that year. This money helps pay for those repairs and replacements. Some of the hydrants we have in town now go back to 1940. They have outlived their usefulness. So there's a plan to start working on replacing some of these hydrants as fast as the water department can.
But if they're estimated that they're only going to have to spend $6,000 in that and to maintain and repair these, how does then these fire departments paying $10,000?
Because that money would go into the enterprise fund, which was recreated for revenue surplus. Even though the town of Alton owns the Alton Waterworks, they can't work on a zero-based budget where we only take in what we fix. We have to have money put away aside so we can fix future damages and future things down the road. So this is a rental fee for each hydrant. Doesn't mean we're going to put $10,000 back in it just because we charge the fire hydrant $10,000.
Well, the taxpayers are going to fund $10,000 for something that the water department say it's only cost them $6,000 to maintain. I've asked the budget committee to review that line.
Well, I guess my only disagreement with you, sir, on that is if we only charge what we fix every year, we'd have no money to fix anything in this town, especially on the water main. The town water department does operate with a plus revenue side most years now. That money usually goes back into the enterprise fund, which goes into reserve funds such as main replacement, vehicle replacement, reservoir replacement. And if we didn't do that, the water system would go to catastrophic conditions, not having this extra money to help to offset some of these costs.
You're telling me we have to pad a line to maintain the water department. Well,
we're not padding a line.
My input is that the budget committee ought to look at this. If the water department says it's costing $6,000 to maintain fire hydrants, I don't think it's correct then that they charge the fire department $10,000.
I certainly appreciate that input, and we will put that on our agenda.
And the highway sand, 4312, 141. It's gone, the budget to the 2001 went up from 47,526 to 68,850, 44% increase in sand.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Can I ask why? What drove that?
The cost of sand is up more than doubled in price from where we had it last time. We went out to bid this year. We awarded a 3-year bid. The lowest bidder did receive the bid. If Mr. Roberts is on the phone, he possibly could answer this better for the exact cost. I do not have the exact cost in front of me. But I believe the cost more than doubled on it. That's why that price has gone up so much.
Okay, thank you. On the default budget, I see increases in the wages. The first one I have is like the water wages. It has a $1,654 increase in the default budget from last year. Can you explain to me that one?
The default budget includes a 2% COLA. That's what the 1,600 is for, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, Laura?
1.6% COLA.
1.6% COLA.
So the selectman disagrees with the New Hampshire Municipal Association bulletin on the default budget questions on September 18th, where it states the same rules apply to employment contracts that contain annual salary increases, which is another commonly debated issue with default budgets. Take, for example, employee whose salary benefits for 2017 budget was $100,000. But let's say the select board entered into an agreement to pay the employee a 10% increase in the sequential year. With 2018 default budget, the board cannot include $205,000 increase in salary benefits. It can just put in $100,000 approved by the legislative body in the 2017 budget. That doesn't mean the $25,000 salary can't be paid to the employees, but it does mean the board will need to move money around to find the extra $5,000. So again, you disagree. You still are saying this year that your default budget will increases after the legislatures changed the RSA concerning increases?
Well, what you're reading from, Mr. Carr, I have not seen or been presented to me, so I don't know what you're reading. 2 is right now, turning to legal opinion, the 2% COLAs have been allowed and has been allowed in the past. You brought this up, I think, at one of our meetings before a year ago. But the 2% COLA, by legal opinion, with our town attorney, is legal. Now, what you're reading from September this year, I can't say because I don't have that in front of me.
Did you hear when I asked the superintendent of schools about the principal salary and what they put in their default budget?
I caught part of it, sir. I didn't catch all of it, no.
Okay. I would ask the Board of Selectmen to reconsider that those lines. And on 4324, number 402,
The solid waste department.
Yes, sir.
the transportation.
Yes, sir.
Is those multi-year contracts that explains the $4,020 for the demo transportation?
Correct. That is multi-year contract.
Was that contract approved by the voters?
No, by the Board of Selectmen.
Are you, is the board again aware that you can't put in those increases unless it's a contract approved by the voters?
That I'm not aware. Can you give me the RSA that states that?
RSA 4013, Roman numeral 9. House Bill 1307.
Okay. And what was the date on it, sir?
It was in, it was the year of September, it was in the year of 2018, I believe 18 or 17. Again, that New Hampshire Municipal Association bulletin that I gave the board last year explains all of this. And I gave a copy to the Budget Committee. Mr. Hershey, I think you, I gave you a copy and you said you were going to pursue this.
And what is it that is actually the issue on the table? Whether or not the selectmen can approve a multi-year contract that has not been approved by the voters?
That they can't put the increases in multi-year contracts in a default budget. It has to be by the legislative body, has to approve contracts.
Yep, I don't know that. I have a book on New Hampshire budgeting, municipal budgeting. If it's in that, I can provide that answer, at least based on that publication.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you. Oh, wait a minute, one more. 4312, 448.
Is this still on the default?
Yes.
Okay.
4312, 488.
4312, 448.
Yes, sir.
Line painting, is that another multi-year contract?
3-year contract. All the ones with the highway department, a 3-year contract. Same with the sand and gravel.
Okay, I would have the same objection for that in the default budget.
Okay.
Now, I want to ask a question. If you have just changed these numbers this afternoon, how is the public going to have any input into these numbers unless you go down each number and tell us what the new numbers are? In other words, how do I know you haven't changed 4130-001? What's 4130-002 now? What's 1003? I mean, how you now?
I have not changed anything, sir. I made a recommendation to the town administrator.
Okay.
The town administrator then will bring it to the Board of Selectmen next week to say where she recommends the 2% will come from. All the
Okay.
Board of Selectmen was direct the department heads to reduce the budget by 2%. It was up to them to figure out what line items they would take it out of. I sat, because I argued for 3 weeks, it was the Board of Selectmen's responsibility, only because they met with the department heads twice and reviewed the budget.
Yeah.
They approved the budget as presented to them with some less recommendations.
Yes.
After it goes to the budget committee, all of a sudden the Board of Selectmen majority said, oh my God, it's too much. Well, they knew it was too much. So I went in as the chairman, went through since Monday night, working today on it to see where that 2% to come from the health departments. Whether they agree with me or not, that's up to them. But Monday, sometime, if this gets approved, department heads or the town administrator will say, this is where the money should come from. So I didn't change any numbers. I can't, as one selectman. I can't change the numbers. I can only make recommendations to the department heads.
Okay,
That's
but is
all I
that,
did.
okay, is that number going to, are you presenting that to the budget committee to ask them to change their number to those new numbers?
I'm just asking them to consider reducing the budget by 2%, which is $209,000. They do not know where it will come from. The Board of Selectmen have no idea because they left it on the department head's shoulders. And I just took it upon myself to go through where I thought it could come out of. But that's not cast in stone because I'm only one member.
So if the budget committee goes along with this, I will not know what these numbers are and say, I don't, any number, say 4130,009. If the budget committee changes their bottom line tonight, I don't know what that number is.
If they change the bottom line tonight just to the operating budget as a whole, 2%.
Yes.
And it would be left up to the selectmen and the department heads after town meeting, if it gets approved, to figure out where those reductions would have to come from.
Well, let's take an example, just maybe I'm not explaining this correctly. Say you have the sand line now. Let's say we go back to the sand. Say tonight the budget committee says, yeah, I'm going to cut 2%. How do I know that they cut the sand or they cut something else and how much they cut it? So I could say, well, wait a minute. So my input tonight, if they said, well, we're going to cut the sand half, I would say, no, I don't think that's a good idea because I think the roads need the sand during the winter. So I'm not going to have any input if I don't know what the numbers are in the sand line. Correct?
Correct. But also, like, if you did a default budget, even though you hand us a default budget, doesn't mean that we'd still put the sand out because we might have to put the money in safety services instead.
But
so
I have
those, to be reduced.
But
so
I have
2% is based, 2% is based on the operating cost. But to give you one example, I'm recommending to the town administrator that the Board of Selectmen receive $7,000 less than their pay next year because of this.
Okay.
So there's one where it would come from.
But I have a paper with your proposed default budget on it.
Correct.
You're asking me now that I won't have any input in the budget because I won't know what in the lines. I would ask the budget committee, I hope I'm explaining this to the budget committee what the problem is here, that you give me a paper with some numbers on it. The night of the meeting, you say, well, we're going to change it, but you're not going to know what the changes are.
You won't tell deliberative.
So I'd ask the budget committee to consider that. Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Welcome. Actually, Lauren, before you go, I have a question regarding, just to clarify the question, on the multi-year contracts, okay? And it's my understanding, and maybe you're familiar with the details on it, but at least in talking with Scott, what I understood that contract to read was it was a multi-year contract. My recollection, it was 3 years, okay? And within that contract, okay, it indicated estimated volumes, weight, okay, and a predetermined rate, okay? So as whether it's year 1, year 2, or 3, there are no increases or arbitrary increases in the rate It's a reliance upon the predetermined rates that were all disclosed on a schedule in the initial contract.
That is correct.
Okay, so then Lauren, my question, did you hear that?
No, I didn't.
Okay. My question was, which I think I just got clarified, is the solid waste contract, which is what you're asking about, which has kind of facilitated this, okay, it was a 3-year contract. And within those 3 years, year 1, year 2, year 3, it had estimates in terms of volume and weight and rate, okay? So it was volume, weight, and rate, right? And all of that was approved in year 1. So when year 2 came around, there wasn't a proposed or a arbitrary rate increase. It was the enforcement of the scheduled and planned rate increase that was contained in the original contract. Okay? So now my question to you is your question based upon your understanding that somehow the town or the town selectmen changed the rate, okay, allowing for more or less, okay, to the hauler as being different than simply following the predetermined and scheduled rate increase that was contained in the original contract?
If you've got a minute, I will read exactly what this says, and I think this will clear up exactly what I'm saying. If you give me a minute.
Before we do that, I want to be sure I understand your question, okay, or what you've asked me to find out, okay?
I'd like to read this. Just let me read this, and I think it'll explain what I'm saying, okay? House Bill 1307 also added new subparagraph to RSA 4013 Roman numeral 9 to define the term contract in default budget definition. The amendment addressed one of the most hotly debated questions relative to the default budget. When the governing body enters a multi-year contract, can the costs associated with a contract automatically be included in next year's proposed operating budget and next year's default budget? That's what they're doing. They're putting in next year's increases. The new amendment specifically states that the terms contracts mean contracts previously approved in the amount so approved by the legislative body in either the operating budget authorized for the previous year or in separate warrant articles for previous years. The easiest way to conceptualize this is to put the definition into context. Let's go back to the hauling contract in the question above, where the select board did not submit the contract to the voters in a separate warrant article, and where the 2017 budget contained $100,000 for waste hauling. We said that a 2018 default budget can contain only $100,000 as approved in last year's operating budget, not the $105 contained in the new contract signed by the select board. The select board can still pay $105 in waste hauling in 2008, even if the town ends up with a default budget. This is because the budget, an adopted operating budget, default budget, is a bottom line budget. Okay, so they can't put in, unless it goes to legislative body, they can't put in contracts. Now,
but I don't think. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you would pause. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, and to me, the operative word there is new contract. Okay, and on a 3-year contract, a 3-year contract is only new in year 1. Year 2 and year 3, okay, are a continuation of a previously approved contract that was approved in year 1. So I don't think that, while I understand I think I understand what you're saying, okay, year 2 and year 3 is not a new contract. It's a continuation of a pre-existing contract.
Yes.
That's my interpretation of that.
Yes.
And therefore, would not be required to go before the voters. It did on year 1, okay? But not year 2 and 3, because it was already approved and it's not a new contract.
No, that's what Senate Bill 1304 clarified. No, that's what I just read. It's funny because this is exactly the example they used in this paper, and this is exactly what the selectmen are doing. It's kind of ironic, and it's exactly the same thing that said you can't put in multi-year contracts increases in the default budget unless the voters have voted in those contracts. I'll be glad to give you a copy of this paper again.
I should have that in the book, okay? And you said it was RSA, what, I'm sorry?
The best thing to do is just go on the web and type in New Hampshire Municipal Association frequently asked questions, September 2018. Very well written article.
Great.
Thank you, Lauren.
So I guess my input is I think the budget committee consider that if you change the numbers, I don't have any clue what these new numbers are. You just given me a bottom line.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, yeah, thanks.
Okay, again, if there's anybody else waiting, if you could click the raise hand button or *9 on your keypad to be connected through.
And Patrick, while we're waiting for somebody else to queue up, I don't know if you have it in front of you. I do here, which is a letter from, excuse me, Cindy Shapley. Do you have that?
I do,
okay.
Yep.
So then I'll leave it for you to introduce at an appropriate time during this meeting.
Okay, yep, no worries. I was just looking to get through all the public input, and then I will.
So, understood.
All right, it looks like Mr. Roberts, are you with us?
Yes, I am, sir.
Welcome.
Thank you. I guess talking about the operating budget, I'll start with that. I understand what the selectmen went through. I understand what Ruben was trying to do and everything. And unfortunately, we need the stuff we were asking for, but I do understand the 5-0 vote of the Board of Selectmen. And I already put forth cuts that you saw, and I think Ruben's has changed those a little bit, but he reached the goal. And if this is what it takes to pass this budget at that reduction, I think I would urge the planning board to reconsider and vote on the $8,168,729. And I'm not going to go in a long debate about it, but I'd like to be able to have everybody consider what's being cut today is coming back in August when they start presenting the budgets again. Most of the stuff is going to be added back in at that time, and we'll have to reconsider it next year because some of it's very important stuff that's being cut. And just as long as the budget committee understands all this stuff will be coming back before you, what's being taken out today. Now, can I go a little bit further and talk to Mr. Carr's question?
I believe that's appropriate as long as you're supporting like the sand. Is that where you were headed?
Yeah, that's where I'm going to. It's, the original price last year was $8.90 a yard. It went up. It has gone up tremendously. And again, the bid process went out. There was 3 major bidders on it. I have the bids in front of me. And the lowest price delivered to the town of Alton was awarded, and that's what it was for. If by chance what Mr. Carr was discussing goes through, it means the highway department will have approximately 2/3 of the sand that's needed to go through the winter season. And with all the cuts that are happening that we did in the original, we cut everything pretty thin, and then with the cut that we're doing now, the 2%, I'm not sure where we're going to make it up. And if we do, we'll have to take it out of services. So I just encourage that we don't go to the default budget and we passed the budget with a 2% cut. That's about all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts.
Ken, just a quick question. If I recall correctly, in a prior meeting, you also recycle the sand from the roads after the winter season. Is that right? Or recycle as best you can?
No, we don't recycle the sand. What we do is we have a big recycling program on gravel. So things that we collect like asphalt and rocks and everything else is stored at the pit. And in the warrant article, you'll see rock and asphalt crushing. This year, we actually crushed over 5,000 yards of material for the purpose of gravel.
Does it make sense, or maybe you've already thought about it, to recycle the sand?
Unfortunately, you can't because it gets contaminated, plus it turns to dust. It gets real fine. It gets ground down by the vehicles.
All right. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts.
And if I didn't say it before, happy retirement to you. Sorry to see you go.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Pat?
Yes.
So I have some information to bring forward to the Budget Committee on warrant Article B, the town operating budget, in regards to the dollar figure that I gave out earlier. Laura brought to my attention that the amount of the proposed or recommended cuts that Mr. Holt provided was 2.5%. So I'd like everyone to disregard the figures I gave out 5 or 10, 15 minutes ago. So with a 2% cut, the proposed operating budget would be $8,210,619.34. And the 2% cut would be $167,564.
Okay, so the 8,210,619 is the number with the 2% cut?
Yes.
Okay.
If it were to be cut by 2%, that would be the new, recommended.
And then the 2.5% is the 8,168,000?
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, do we have anybody else on the phone?
Mr. Shea.
Okay, phone
Hello.
number. Hi there.
Hi, this is Richard Shea again from Roberts Cove Road.
Hello, Mr. Shea.
How are you, sir?
I'm very well, and yourself?
A little bit tired after that last round, but I'm hanging in there.
I hear you. Well, we appreciate your input.
I just wanted to say I was able to watch most of the process online for the Board of Selectmen's work on the budget, and they put in a tremendous amount of effort. I think when the department budgets were first presented, at least some of the board members didn't know or hadn't grasped what the total impact bottom line was going to be. Others probably kept better track of it. I don't know that for sure. I'm just guessing. But once they did and those hard numbers became available and it was an increase of well over 7%, it was like throwing a bucket of cold water on everybody. And they backed up, and they did a lot of negotiations, and there were some very passionate pleas made as far as more cuts or holding the line or any combination thereof. And I think that they've arrived at a compromise with a 2% reduction that at least has a chance of passing with the voters. I think that full cut, particularly if it went forward without being recommended by the board, would have been voted down. Even the final budget that we're talking about now is almost a 6% increase, so its passage is far from guaranteed. but it has a better chance. And I hope that you will act favorably on it. If you find any opportunity for further cuts, I would be delighted to hear about them. I also would like to ask if the budget committee meetings could be put on the website. There were some there from last January, but the most recent ones I could not locate. Maybe they're there and I can't find them, but would be very helpful for any citizen that kind of wants to follow what's going on. And finally, if anybody knows of a full process explanation that's not the size of an encyclopedia about how you arrive at budgets in New Hampshire, I would love to know about it. I think I partially understand it, but every time I think I do, something new comes up that I hadn't heard before. So if there is such a document, it would be very helpful. And finally, I just want to thank the Board of Selectmen and the members of the Budget Committee and the Board of Education, because I know it's a thankless task. It takes a ton of time, and no matter what you do and what you come up with, somebody's not going to be happy. So thank you very much.
Richard, just a quick FYI, there's a book that is put out on, I believe it's specific to New Hampshire, budgeting process. And of course, now that you ask about it, I cannot remember the precise name. Liz, I think I got it from you. Do you know the book I'm talking about?
Yes, probably budget and finance, the basic law of budgeting.
Yes, thank you. Well, what a great name, you know? And so, Richard, you could follow up with the town administrator for that reference, and you can buy it online, like at Amazon, you know, or, you know, any other company, okay? So that's a good reference material, so.
Okay, thank you. Only through COVID-19 would I ever get so bored that I'd read that, but we're about at that point.
Touche.
We certainly appreciate your input, Mr. Shea, and your thoughts. We'll be sure to follow up.
Thank you very much.
Okay, again, if there's anybody else out there looking to speak, if you press the raise hand button or number 9 on your dial pad, you can come through and be activated to speak. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties, please call 603-507-1002.
Is it *9, Patrick?
It is. I'm sorry, did I misspeak?
Yeah, I just left the star out. That's
okay, press *9 on your dial pads.
Hello?
Yep, got it.
Oh.
Hi, this is Lauren Carrigan. I wanted to clarify something after Mr. Roberts' comment. I didn't ask the Budget Committee to consider cutting any of the sand. I just asked how the increase in, I didn't know whether it was we were short on the sand pile or whether the number, the budget, you know, the budget, excuse me, the bid had come up higher. I didn't, I just interested in where the number increased. And
sure. Yeah, I think he was just, I believe he was just speaking to the fact that there was a new bid process. That's right. All. I don't believe he was insinuating that you were suggesting cutting sand. I don't believe that.
Okay. And on your last call, that individual just got to go online and type in RSA 32 and 35. It's the RSAs that cover the budgeting. Very simple. Okay. Refers to Article RSA 40 in sections. There's not much. It's not like a book you have to get. It's pretty simple. And I guess I want to say I'm not really happy with a larger number. I'm not. I'm glad that they try to cut 2%. It's just it puts us in the position, the public, that we don't know what you're talking about cutting. And I may object to some of those cuts. And I can't express that tonight. So it's like, at the last minute you cut, but I don't know where you're cutting. So maybe I think that some things should stay, and I would like to have input of the board. Please don't cut that area. And I can't tell you what those areas are tonight. So
Trust me, I feel your frustration.
I would have liked to have you people cut 4% out of this back down. But again, I would like input into, what you're planning on spending in areas and what you're not spending in areas. So that's my objection. Not that I want you to have an 8% increase in the budget. I certainly think I'm not a person that wants to have an 8% increase. So thank you again.
Thank you, Mark.
More detail.
All right, do we have anybody else on the line?
Okay.
One more.
Vote
Okay.
to close public hearing. Motion to close public hearing.
Motion by Mr. Hershey,
Second.
second by Mr. Mitchell. Further discussion on closing the public hearing.
Yes, sir. You have a letter you need to read into the record from Sydney.
Oh, yes,
John
I
Stafford?
sure do.
You can't close that hearing when you read that letter.
Oh, I thought he was gonna put that in public input.
Oh, well, if it's a letter concerning the budget, it has to be part of the hearing, I would say.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Thank you for following up on that. So I guess we got to call it to a vote now. Mr. O'Brien, no on closing the public hearing. Mr. Wentworth,
No.
Mr. Hershey,
Nope.
Mr. Parker,
No.
Ms. Karatonov,
No,
and Mr. Mitchell.
No.
My apologies, everyone. So I do have a record or a letter here from Miss Sydney Shapley that she would like read into the record. And it states as follows. My name is Sydney Shapley, and I'm a taxpayer in the town of Alton. I'm asking this letter of support for Lakes Region Mental Health Center be read into record at the Budget Committee hearing. Unfortunately, I'm unable to attend due to another board meeting I have via Zoom this evening. I was disappointed to see that the Board of Selectmen would not move the Lakes Region Mental Health Center article for a vote to be recommended on the warrant this year. The board had asked a number of questions regarding the request, which were answered by me in great detail in a follow-up letter dated November 1st, 2020. When I called to inquire if there were additional questions, I was advised the information had sufficiently answered the board's questions. I would also like to remind everyone that the town has historically approved this annual request, which shows the residents believe this organization provides value. Lakes Region Mental Health Center provides $21,610 in charitable care to Alton residents in their fiscal year 2020. In total, services were provided to 110 residents, 18 of which required emergency services. As a reminder, they provide services regardless of the ability to pay, regardless of the circumstance, and to all in Alton who may require it. This includes residents and employees who may require assistance in dealing with situations that can arise as a result of their day-to-day work. This would be most likely to occur in areas such as law enforcement and fire and emergency services. Regardless of one's personal feeling towards the value of mental health services, the residents of Alton should have the ability to determine for themselves if they wish to continue to support the Lakes Region Mental Health Center for the care they have provided at no cost to our residents. It should be noted that although the amount of charitable care provided was $21,610, the organization is seeking level funding and asking for the same amount that the voters approved last year, which was $15,750. In this year of the pandemic, we are hearing a lot about people's mental health, whether it's isolation, unemployment, the stress of remote work and learning, or simply the uncertainty of it all. It seems unconsociable to not support an organization that is asking for 73% of their charitable care to be reimbursed. I ask the Budget Committee to consider this when determining whether they will support this article and hope the selectmen will reconsider their position as well. Respectfully, Sydney Shapley.
Thank you.
you have another hand that was just raised.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear Josh. Do we have somebody else on the line?
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, welcome to the meeting. If you could state your name.
Sure. Hold on just a moment, please.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that I am in support of Lakes Region Mental Health Center, mental health services. I'm a resident of Alton as well and a mental health professional. I just wanted to focus on some of emergency services that we provide. We are here 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, 7 days a week. We take calls at 2 a.m. We help anybody that is in crisis, and we ask that you support us because we're very grateful to be in this service for you. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
And you have another caller right here.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Wait. I think the secretary is looking for your name for the record.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Kimberly Godfrey.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Nancy Morse, and I'm a resident of Alton and a taxpayer, and also a mental health professional. And I wanted to express to you tonight the valuable role and the vital role that your local mental health center plays in our community, especially during this time of the COVID crisis. Not having access to mental health care increases the potential for an increase in family violence, a loss of social connectivity for the elderly, possible increase in suicidal behavior, an increase in substance abuse use, and an eventual hospitalization or an incarceration. The Lakes Region Mental Health Center is a valuable resource for the people of Alton. And I know our taxes are high and I pay them, but I'm certainly willing to support the Lakes Region Mental Health Center in any way that I can. And I hope that we can help them out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nancy. All right. Do we have anybody else on the line?
One more.
Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi, my name is Ann Nichols, and I'm the Director of Development for Lakes Region Mental Health Center. I think the letter and those who have spoken have really done a nice summation of the work that we do. It's important work. It's very difficult work. But I am here to answer any questions that any member of the Budget Committee or the public may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. We appreciate that. Does anybody have any questions for Ann while she's still on the line?
Is the purpose of this for the Budget Committee to go back to the selectmen, to ask the selectmen to reconsider, which is a vote that's already been made?
No, sir.
No, we didn't.
This tonight is for you folks to decide on if you want to recommend each warrant article as they are written.
Okay. So, Ann, a couple of questions. Dave Hershey here. For the services that you provide, are any of those? I mean, why would they not be reimbursed by medical care? You know, as an example, Blue Cross, you know, Harvard Pilgrim, you know, whatever the medical, you know, provider is.
Sure, and thank you for the question, and it's a good one. The reality is that the majority of people that we serve, they may receive Medicaid benefits, they may have insurance, but the fact is that the majority of those that we serve, particularly in this program, do not have either insurance or access to insurance or the financial resources to pay for it. We're mandated by the state to provide an emergency services program for every town that we serve, and there's 24 of them, and Gilmanton is one of them. Keep in mind that over 70% of our total revenues come from Medicaid. So that gives you a pretty good idea of the population that we serve. All that we're asking for is just to help us fill the gap between the cost that we incur to run the program versus the expense that we incur to run the program. So let me just give you an example. In last fiscal year, we received, it was just under $600,000 in revenue to provide emergency services, and that would have come from patients who are paying for their own care, their insurance, or Medicaid reimbursement. However, it cost us well over $1 million to run the program. And that's because we have to staff the emergency services program with doctors and nurses and master level clinicians 24 hours, 7 days a week. It's sort of like you have to staff your fire department, even if it's a volunteer fire department. They have to be on call and ready to serve at any point in time. And when you're dealing with medical staff that provides very complex services, usually in the ER of a hospital, there's a significant cost to that. So I hope that answers your question. And if it doesn't, be sure to let me know.
Oh, and then so really the issue here is, and I'm just trying to oversimplify it perhaps, and not to be disrespectful, and that is that the emphasis here are for those people that can't afford or don't have insurance coverage, right? That's kind of the population talking about.
Basically, what we're asking each town for is not necessarily to reimburse us for charitable care, because you couldn't. We provide over $1.2 million a year in charitable care between all 24 towns. What we are asking for you is to help us fill that $500,000 hole that we face between the revenue that we earn and the expenses that are incurred to provide these services.
Yep, and that's that hole, okay, or that gap, okay, it comes from those people that either don't have insurance, okay, or can't afford it.
That's true.
Okay, so then for that population, okay, are you able to retroactively apply somebody for Medicaid and go back and collect for the services that you've rendered?
We do have people on staff that work with all of our patients and help them get connected to benefits, whether it's with a health insurance company or whether it's with a government benefit program. So yes.
So then why wouldn't everybody be eligible, if for nothing else, for coverage under the Affordable Care Act or Medicaid? And yes, I recognize there may be a gap of 60 or 90 days before they were deemed eligible, and then you get retroactively reimbursed.
Because not everybody qualifies for Medicaid. There are people that go to work every day to try to support their family, but because of the income and qualification requirements, they don't meet the qualifications to get Medicaid reimbursement. The other thing,
would they then be eligible for the sliding scale costs associated with the Affordable Care Act?
Of course.
Okay.
All right. And we certainly appreciate your input and your on-the-spot ability to very in-depthly and accurately answer some of these questions.
Sure, no problem. I also want to take a moment just to express my appreciation to the taxpayers of the town of Gilmanton for all the many years that you have supported our organization and the people that we serve. So I want to express my thanks and appreciation to you.
And our appreciation to you as well for the services that you provide,
Thank you.
So.
I have a question, or actually a comment. I just wanted to thank Ann and the other people who spoke in favor of this article and this reimbursement for hanging out through the whole meeting to be able to speak to this, because I think it's a very valuable service to our community. And, I think we should ask ourselves, you know, this is clearly services that Alton residents need and are using. And they gave the example that we're only reimbursing a portion of that. And I think if Ann had an example of over several years, I think that would probably be the case, since I heard this on a budget committee before, some of the same discussion. You know, we need to think about, if we don't have these services, there's a repercussion for that, and there's an impact. And where do we find, how do we fill that need as a community if we don't have Lake Region's mental health services to fill that need? There's a cost that lands someplace else, whether it's the police department, the fire department, you know, and it's an important way that we need to support our community. So I wanted to thank everybody who spoke to that tonight.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, anybody else on Lakes Region Mental Health?
Mr. Chairman, if I may just say a couple of things real quick, just to put things in perspective for the taxpayers.
Of course, yeah, no worries. I was just going to ask you to come close to the table because that microphone isn't very strong.
I know this is dragging on, so I will be brief, but I think it's important listening to the services and the care that everybody's outlining. But to put a fine point on it, the emergency care that they're talking about, this is when the police department finds or encounters somebody in crisis. They're in immediate crisis. We take them into custody. It's called an IEA. It's an involuntary emergency admission. Our requirement for that by law is we take an individual in custody who's a danger to themselves and others due to mental distress, and they go to the emergency room. But we are required to get a clinical evaluation on that individual before they can be placed in any kind of secure facility or obtain the help that they need. So this is directly in conjunction for those emergency cases with the police department and what we're trying to do. So it's a joint effort for the community when somebody is in immediate crisis. It is a service that we utilize quite often throughout the year, and it's a very important service because a lot of times those situations are the most volatile ones that we deal with when mental illness is involved. So I won't take up any more of your time, but I did think it was important to bring that up.
And Chief, not only most volatile, but also the scariest in terms of violent escalations, you know.
Yes, so very unpredictable.
Completely understand. Right? So, yeah.
Thank you very much, Chief. Appreciate that. All right. Is there anybody else on the line?
I see no more on the line.
That's the last time.
So make a motion to close the public portion this evening.
Second. Motion by Mr. Hersey, second by Mr. Wentworth. Those in favor, Mr. Wentworth.
Aye.
Mr. Hershey.
Aye.
Mr. Parker.
Aye.
Mrs. Karatonoff.
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien, yes. The public hearing for the town budget is now closed. And I guess this is where I got a little confused with adding in that letter. We have a whole separate item here on our agenda for public input, but the public hearing was our public input. So I guess at this point, I guess we could entertain the budget committee's, or the select board's recommendation for the 2% cut. I guess my only thoughts that I'd like to bring to the table on this is that each and every one of us are elected to this position to go through and comb through all these details and at the end, hopefully come up with an agreeable figure that we can present to the taxpayers. So I do feel that it is all of our responsibilities, regardless if we completely agree with it or not, if we're on one side of the table or the other, to come together and reach some common ground and still provide a solid budget and a recommendation for the taxpayers. Of course, there will be those times where, you know, we can't necessarily agree, but I think we should do our absolute best not necessarily completely agree, but to at least recommend a budget to the people. So I guess I'll open the floor up to any members that have input or feelings on that topic. Okay.
So I guess just a comment. I think it's, I certainly appreciate that some work's been done to try to rationalize how we would get to a 2%. It is hard to, I guess, feel comfortable, with that without understanding kind of what that would mean based on kind of the detailed review that we've already done and at a department level approved. I don't know if that's something that we'd have the opportunity to kind of review before we vote, or does this?
I could give you ideas of what I suggested to the town administrator, but it's not cast in stone. The only place it would be really cast in stone if it goes along, or depending on what the majority do now, the selectmen, they would have to get up at the deliberative session and say where it will be coming from. Because they're the ones ultimately, and they're really not even the ultimate ones, because the Board of Selectmen left it in the hands of the department heads to come up with the reductions. They didn't care where it came from. They just wanted 2%, the majority did. And that was the most embarrassing part as the chairman of that board, because three of them just said, cut it 2%, two of us are fighting for a full budget. And it just didn't work, but it got down to the crunching, and I got very aggravated, and I probably got a little more upset at my meetings than I should have. But I got to the point where I lose pay raises to my employees if I don't try to do something, because I can't go to a town meeting with 3 people on my board against the budget they agreed to, against 2 of us. That wouldn't have default 100%, no other way. And it was very embarrassing. So I can give you ideas that I suggested to the town administrator. I did say to her today, she can hopefully back me up on this, do as you want with it. If she didn't use my suggestions, I would be fine with it. I was just trying to help out the departments because they're all busy every day. In the last 4 weeks on this, they've been going back and forth. They didn't know if we should or should we, So, I mean, I can give you some of my ideas. There is a list that was performed by some of the department heads a couple of weeks ago. Not all of them got in on it. The chief just came in with his today. I can give you some ideas, but I can't say it's going to be 100% that way. I mean, my initial impact today, after I added the last item in, came in at $238,000. Because I didn't add in the lease of the grader and the loader in the highway department. Because our lease with the grader and loader is up. We bought that loader and grader now. We were going to enter into a new lease agreement this year. So that was $81,000 that could come out of that line item. The $21,000 is left in for the backhoe lease. Another one was the new truck driver's position, $38,000. So there's a reduction there. So there's $100 and some odd thousand, those two combined together. Like I said, building department, I did not recommend a touch. I did not recommend planning board because their budgets are so low. If you got into 2%, you're taking away from their salaries. Solid Waste Center came in, I believe, with a $7,000 reduction, even though they overexpended those line items this year. Selectmen's salary, like I said, I recommended reducing $7,000 from our salaries. $2,000 in unanticipated expenses and general administration. That's what I'm recommending, but I can't say it's going to happen. New EMT, I recommended not to fund that. There was a new position for the fire department, full-time new firefighter. But I had stated at the last meeting, if the selectmen were recommending to cut $200,000 out of the budget, there should be no new positions. Liz told me, she said, Ruben, I hate to see you do that. We really need that full-time EMT because we do, because our chairman here took a new job at Bedford, New Hampshire, so he's full-time fire somewhere else now. We don't have him always to rely on like we have had in the past. I'm sure he's still helping out. But this is why it's hard to go in and look at a department and say, I think you can do with less of this. But I had to go from what the expenditure and the December to what we forecasted for the whole year of 2020 and go by what they're asking, say, do I feel they can take a little more here? I think they can, but I don't know 100% sure because I'm not in his shoes every day, nor the fire chiefs, nor the highway agents. Do I think they could? I think we could. I don't like it because the reason I don't like it is 5 of us voted on that budget as it stood. And then they got cold. So that just meant to tell me that maybe the majority of my board really didn't pay attention when they were looking at the budget.
And if you follow up on what the, if you follow up on what the chief was saying, he may be accurate, maybe he's not. It's a little bit of a crapshoot as to the long-term financial impact of the COVID. Is it going to be March, April, May? Is it going to be August, September, October? You know, who knows, okay? But when you're looking at, you know, no future relief, okay, from the government, okay, you know, I think you have to be looking at an extremely tight budget, okay? And if you're looking at, you know, the philosophy, okay, of continuing payroll on the status quo for a facility that's closed, okay, I struggle with that, you know? Just, you know, yeah, unemployment is unfortunate, I get it, okay? But there's a facility for that, and it's not the town budget, you know?
Yeah, I guess I respectfully disagree with you on your library argument, because they were continuing to provide services, they just weren't doing it with open doors, but.
Understood.
I am, well, as you all know, I was completely against the cutting the budget. I believe that the department heads worked real hard this year to bring in budgets that were within what they needed. But that being said, I'm prepared to change my position based on the fact that I do believe that the employees work real hard here, and I'd hate to see them lose anything because of a poor judgment in what we're doing here. So, like I said, I'm prepared to change my position, but I'm really not happy about it.
What is the poor judgment?
So I guess I can try and speak to this a little bit, and I kind of summed this up in my little speech that I had earlier. But the biggest problem with this budget is the fact that there was a significant increase in New Hampshire retirement. If that increase was not there, I don't believe we would even be thinking about having this conversation right now, or be into it this late in the game. And it seems like every year there's always a wild card in the budget. There's always that thing that we're waiting on till the last second that we sometimes dodge a bullet and sometimes get hit with and we have to handle. So I'm curious if would it make more sense, and I know this is a huge financial nightmare, would it make more sense to move to a fiscal year? And then also, it was a suggestion that we brought up, I believe, 2 budget seasons ago now. It was on the employee evaluations and their raises. Right now, we blanket on, or we don't blanket, we have an estimate increase, versus if we do the reviews ahead of time, then we'd have a kind of known increase. So there are some things that I still think that we could work on. Again, I'm not suggesting that we move to a fiscal year instead of a calendar year. I know that is a huge undertaking, especially with municipal government, but it seems like we're not the only ones that were faced with this. So while we heard everybody's budgets and we were perfectly fine with the generally reasonable increases, we were hit with this at the very end. And I think that's where some of the selectmen, you know, they were okay with the budgets ahead of time, but once we got hit with that and that got added into the bottom line, you know, that's the 2% or 2.5% we're talking about here, is that essentially that number. And unfortunately, it's not going away. So it's going to come back next year. So whatever we cut the budget this year, just like Mr. Roberts said, will be coming back next year. So the budgets will have to be just as tight next year, regardless of what we do, to try and absorb that. And then, of course, the select board is going to go back through and reevaluate the benefits package and employee contributions and all that. So I'm not exactly sure how that might factor in. But there's a lot of hurdles here, and the biggest hurdle I don't think we can really point any fingers at is this New Hampshire retirement increase. And I'm not sure if the writing was on the wall for that through the the municipal association or whatever. I can't speak to that. But I do know that it hit everybody pretty hard and rather unexpected.
Well, and therein lies the issue, Patrick, okay? All right. It should not be unexpected.
I completely agree.
It's unexpected because they're not making any future liability calculations. And they just roll the dice and say, hey, whatever the number is, okay, we're just going to dish it out and allocate it to various towns or municipalities. Okay? So maybe the real issue is we undertake that responsibility on our own so that we can forecast what our future obligation will be based upon our retiring employees. Okay? So, maybe that's part of the issue. Okay? The second part of the issue is going to the state saying, like, what the heck? What's to say next year it's not, the number isn't 500,000?
Yeah, and Dave, I'm completely on board with what you're saying. The problem is we're so behind the ball at this point in terms of this budget. As far as I know, tonight is supposed to be the end of us making budget adjustments in terms of that bottom line. So we are like so far behind the ball, and we just collectively as a group, it's obviously our budget that goes on the ballot. Collectively as a group, we really need to, make a decision on this, and it needs to be tonight.
Yeah, and that's fine, and I'm ready to vote on it. Okay, sure. But if you want, you were the one looking to talk about it. My only concern is, well, one of my concerns is I hear a lot of discussions about, people working hard. Okay, and I don't doubt that for a second. Okay, but and I'm the first one to admit to it. Okay, there are many years that I've worked really hard. Okay, and I don't get a pay increase. Okay, so I'm not sure I see and can match the correlation between working hard and being compensated in a manner in which everybody feels that is appropriate for the, for their own gain. Okay, I get it. Okay, we all should be paid, whatever the market rate is. Okay, but to suggest that we work, an individual works hard so they get paid more. Well, maybe yes, maybe no. Okay, I don't know that that's a blanket, responsibility and expectation. Okay, so just, make that as a general statement.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Not to prolong this more. Don't agree with you fully on the New Hampshire retirement system. Part of it that scared the selectmen was the $137,000 increase in health insurance. But going back to employees that work hard, 50% of our employees could have walked in the town administrator's department and said, I'm done until this pandemic's over, and got paid $600 a week, plus a state unemployment, $900 a week more than what we paid them, but none of them did. They stayed. So that's what I mean about commitment, working hard. Yes, we all work hard. I still work 7 days a week, but that's my choice. My employees worked hard. They got them pay raises this year. So yes, if they work hard and they go above and beyond, which our employees did, they should get a pay increase. To say that they shouldn't, no, that is wrong. That's the private sector's mentality at times. But I feel they deserve their COLA this year, and they deserve up to a 3% merit. To say that they don't otherwise, because maybe they did work hard, but they don't get it this year, no, I don't agree with that. We need to reward our employees to keep them, and I feel this is a good reward. To say otherwise is an insult.
I agree with you 100%, Ruben.
That's all I have to say, Mr. Chairman. Sorry.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd just like to make a couple comments and questions. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend the last meeting because I was the alternate to this position and I had a commitment already, so I didn't hear those discussions. But I certainly hear Mr. Wentworth's stress in the situation with the select board changing their mind about budgets that the department heads had sat down with the board 2 times and had been approved. You know, I think to a certain extent, the retirement increase, you know, was visible months ago, and it was in our original numbers too, because we had the same impact at the school. So if it's a surprise, I think that's kind of, as someone said, not really paying attention to the original numbers. I guess what concerns me is when I hear, you know, we may be giving up an EMT position that we desperately need to offset that increase in retirement, which we really had no control over. And I commend Mr. Wentworth for going through and trying to find a way to keep us from falling into a default budget. I just don't know if there's a way to look at that 2% reduction, but perhaps limit it to certain categories. I don't know, you know, I hear everybody kind of worried about where that 2% is going to come from. And I didn't know as a committee if there's a way we could try to find some parameters that would at least protect some of the essential services that we need. I understand Mr. Carr's concern that the numbers, he doesn't have the numbers line by line in a bottom number tonight, but there's also the deliberative session to talk about that. But I guess I'd make the suggestion that if there's a way this committee, in looking at that 2% reduction, could try to put some guidelines to that would help protect essential things that we need in light of increases that were out of our control. That would be my request.
Thank you, Karen.
But I'm not smart enough to know what those categories should be necessarily, so leaving that open.
I do agree with Karen. I mean, it is our budget that goes on to the ballot. So essentially at the end of the day, we are the ones that need to speak for it. I don't know procedurally what is the best way to move forward with this. I'll be completely honest.
Trust me, Mr. Chairman, that's why I wasn't here at last week's meeting.
So I think what we're gonna do, okay, and I'm just looking for clarity on that, is we're gonna vote on 3 budgets, okay? One is the proposed budget of $8,378,000. The other number, okay, is with a 2% decrease, which is $8,210,000, okay? And the third choice is minus 2.5%, which is $8,168,000. Okay, I rounded those. Okay, but I mean that's our finish line, right?
Somebody would have to make motions to that effect.
Well, no, but before we do, I just want to understand the path we're running on. And I think I just now heard that there's maybe a correction to that number.
Well, the 2.5% was incorrect.
2%.
Yeah, the selectman made the motion of 2%, but selectman presented a dollar figure representing 2%, but it was actually 2.5%. So
all right, so then taking the percentages out, okay, we still have 3 numbers that we're going to be considering.
No, 2, just 2.
Okay, so 8.378 is one.
Yep.
And then the other one is which? 8.2 or 8.1?
8.2.
So the 8.1 is off of the table.
Well,
Well, it depends on what the budget committee.
not necessarily. The budget committee can decide to do one number only, the one that you voted on originally. Well, you didn't vote on it because it failed. It was a mute thing. So, or you can amend, or you can make a new motion that your operating budget could be the 8.2. That's up to you folks, but right now, it looks bad for all of us because the budget committee didn't pass the budget last week, and the selectmen are actually now 5-0, but not on this. On this paper, we're 3 against and 2 for. So, and all we can do is recommend by town attorney. We can, and that's all I was supposed to do last week. But the reason I will tell you real quick, I did not come here before you last week because I could not defend the 2% because I had nothing to give you for line items, okay? And that's why I asked the Board of Selectmen, give me the specifics, because I would not come here before you and say, I want you to cut it 2%, but I can't give you specifics. So I ended up coming tonight only because they defeated me, because I said, if I don't do this, I'm gonna have a default budget on my hand, then I'm gonna have 50 some odd employees. They're gonna be quite upset. And if the selectmen did what they did 2 years ago, find the money in other budgets, we would never have a budget pass from now on the Board of Selectmen. Because I don't think they could find the other $60,000 to do it this year, because I think it is that tight. But I apologize for not coming last week, but even if I had, I would have had to vote the way the Board of Selectmen did. And it doesn't make me happy, but I would have had to, because I represent them.
So Ruben, is the Board of Selectmen, bringing the 8,210,000 to the table? Is that what they're?
No, sir. No, they wanted to recommend, and I believe Ms. Hope put it to you last week, they wanted 2% taken off. I believe that's how he represented it. The selectmen's position is they'd like to reduce the budget by 2%, which is the amount of what Liz told you earlier.
210?
Yeah.
That's
That's what they are recommending, because they would like to reduce it.
Right, the 8,210,000, they were at 2.5% with the 8,168, correct?
Right. Right. The motion on the floor, the motion that got approved was for a reduction of 2%.
Okay. all right.
One member of the board made a mention that it was 2% equal 209,000, which it did not.
Right.
So the motion that got approved was 2%. And they asked to bring it before the budget committee to recommend to them, and that was it. And it was still up to the budget committee what they wanted to do. Last week it failed. So in this week here, right now, you have a budget that's not passed yourselves. And after the public hearing, you always decide whether you want to change the budget or not, operating according to the way people speak. This has been my worst year in 16 years, fighting for a budget. I have to tell you, folks.
Okay. So procedurally, am I understanding it correctly that we need to read down through all of these money articles and provide a recommendation again?
You should read each article, and then if you want to change your previous recommendations based on the public input that you've received tonight, you certainly may. This is your opportunity to do that.
Okay.
But yes, you
All right.
should read each warrant article.
Okay.
Sorry.
With that being said, I'm going to make a motion that we take and I apologize for doing so. I'm going to make a motion that we take a 10-minute recess and reconvene at 9 p.m. mainly because of an IT aspect of things here. I guess our phone cuts out at 3 hours. So we're just going to reset and reconvene here back at 9 p.m.
Thank you.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Yeah, second.
Second by Mr. Wentworth. Those in favor, Mr. Wentworth,
Yes.
Mr. Hershey,
No.
Mr. Parker,
Yes.
Mrs. Karatonov,
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yes.
Okay, we'll see you all in 10. Thank you very much. All right, if everybody's ready. All right, if everybody's ready, we'll call the meeting back to order.
Okay.
There we go. All right, we will resume the meeting at 9:02 p.m. First item, if nobody has anything else, I will move on to the warrant articles. And I just wanted to bring up the two warrant articles we did not read from the school. And I believe those were Articles 8 and 9. I will read those now. These were already voted upon, so if we want to vote on them again, please let me know. Article 8, discontinuing of expendable trusts, to see if the school district will vote to discontinue the following expendable trusts: the Capital Reserve Fire Suppression Fund. As of October 27th, 2020, the balance of the fire suppression CRF was $2,437.10. The Emergency General Maintenance Expendable Trust Fund. As of October 27th, 2020, the balance of the Emergency General Maintenance ETF was $8,120.44. Security and Safety Expendable Trust. As of October 27th, 2020, the balance of the Security and Safety Expendable Trust Fund was $141.54. Electrical Service Upgrade Expendable Trust Fund. As of October 27th, 2020, the balance of the Electrical Service Upgrade Expendable Trust Fund was $663.48. Bathroom Refurbishment Expendable Trust Fund. As of October 27th, 2020, the balance of the Bathroom Refurbish Expendable Trust Fund was $1.84. Roof Expendable Trust Fund. As of October 27th, 2020, the balance of the Roof Expendable Trust Fund was $367.59. Said funds and accumulated interest to date of withdrawal are to be transferred to the Alton School District's Buildings and Grounds Expendable Trust Fund. The Alton School Board recommends, or doesn't recommend, by a vote of 5-0. So I believe that means they recommend. That needs clarity. The Alton Budget Committee does not recommend at a vote of 4-0. So based
Patrick,
on
the Alton School Board did approve unanimously.
Okay. All right. So that verbiage just needs to be updated. I don't have the minutes from last week, and it's not clear here. Should we re-vote on this?
No, it was unanimous. from the
Yeah,
budget
I think
committee
so
as well.
too. As was the next one.
Okay. So that is Article 9. To see if the school district will vote to create an expendable trust fund under the provisions of RSA 198:20-C to be known as the PMHS Technology Expendable Trust Fund for the purpose of unanticipated expenses that may arise in the Prospect Mountain High School related to technology infrastructure, hardware, software, and any other technology-based expenses, and further to raise and appropriate the sum of $16,296.00 to go into the fund, which represents 54 2/32% of the total monies of the $30,000.00 appropriation, and further that this appropriation shall be contingent upon both Alton 53.32% and Barnstead 45.68% school districts adopting the article and appropriating and transferring their respective sum of money. Furthermore, to name the Prospect Mountain High School JMA School Board as agents to expend from this fund. The JMA board recommends by a vote of 8-0. The Alton School Board recommends $16,296 by a vote of 5-0. And the Alton Budget Committee, again, not clear, recommends, does not recommend $16,296 by a vote of 4-0. Does anybody want to vouch to that vote, or shall we revote?
We recommended.
It's recommended. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. We will move on to the town warrant articles. I believe we'll be starting off with Article A, Benefit Pay Expendable Trust. Does that sound about right? Okay. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 to be added to the Benefit Pay Expendable Trust Fund previously established in 2001. Said funds are recommended by the town auditors to be used to pay for benefits accrued by town employees and redeemed when they leave employment with the town of Alton, in accordance with the town personnel policy. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0 and recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. A majority vote is required. Does anybody wish to change our opinion on this article? Okay. Article B, the town operating budget. Shall the town raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amounts set forth on this budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $8,378,183. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $8,099,570, which is the same as last year, with the exception of the water budget, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the Board of Selectmen or by law, or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, Roman numeral X and XVI, to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. This article does not include special or individual articles addressed, not recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-2, recommended by the Budget Committee. It doesn't have last week's vote in there, and it's a majority vote is required. Does anybody wish to revisit this article?
I do not.
I believe if we wanted to change or update our appropriation, would we have to have somebody who made the motion at the last meeting bring it back up? Do I understand that correctly?
Well, it was a tied vote, Mr. Chairman, so either side should be able to bring it back up. Whoever was opposed to it, whoever was for it. If I recall that right. If there was a majority that opposed to it, then only the majority that opposed it could have remake a motion and second it.
What is the board's wishes? There's a lot of discussion on this topic tonight, so I want to make sure everybody's voices are heard on this.
Ruben, just a question on, so I think there are some like warrant articles where we take aspects of it from the general fund, recognizing the conversation about one of the biggest blips in this, increases in the budget is related to the retirement, the increases in the retirement fund. Are there opportunities to offset some of those expenses out of the surplus?
Well, the biggest thing was it wasn't all retirement. You got to figure $137,000 was your health insurance this year. That's where your biggest increase came from, was $137,000 for health insurance. Yes, there was an increase in your retirement. Is there any more in the fund balance that you can take out of? I don't believe so, because we were pushing it at $500,000. The recommendation was not to use more than $500,000 in the fund balance to go out and purchase one-time items is basically what we looked at versus leasing it. the retirement be a reoccurring thing every year, so that one, in general, principle would not be good to use the surplus fund for that.
So is the retirement increase, that it's like a new permanent then? It's not, like, I thought I understood.
Retirement's going to keep going year after year, so usually you
At the
wouldn't
same-
use a
at the
surplus
same
fund
rate,
for
though?
something that's continuous every year.
Is it going at the same rate though?
The rates change, in your budget binder under the benefits budget. There's a flyer in there that shows out a 3-year plan for different rates, so
That would include the retirement rate?
percentages. It would be probably near to the end of you should have that in your binder. It's a document from the New Hampshire.
And I do want to apologize. I misspoke slightly. The $239,000 overall increase was in benefits in general, not just New Hampshire retirement.
Get you a copy.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
just to make
only
sure,
thing is- I'm sorry, Karen.
I just want to make sure I understood that if we do not revisit this article, then it would be designated at the deliberative session and most likely on the ballot that the Board of Selectmen does not recommend this budget and that the Budget Committee had a stalemate vote on it.
Yeah, it would actually go through as the Budget Committee does not recommend
Does
because
not
if
recommend.
it's a fail, which I personally feel is completely irresponsible moving forward with that vote.
Hey, Pat, just so I got this correct, are we discussing the 8,210,000?
Right now, we're discussing Article B, the town operating budget. So if we were to make a suggestion to alter that number, I do believe that this would be the time to change our recommendation.
Legal counsel wants you to make a recommendation on here. Because it was a tie vote 2 times at the last meeting, he recommended it be left blank until tonight so that you can take a vote to put your official recommendation on it after hearing all of the public input.
All right, so I'll make a recommendation that we accept the $8,210,619.37.
Well, actually, I think grammatically, what you're suggesting, Ruben, or I'm sorry, Brock.
That's all right.
To replace the 8,378,000 with the 8,210,000.
Correct.
Effectively reducing the bottom line by 2%.
By 2%.
Do we have a second?
Is there a second?
I'll second it because I'm representing the board.
Okay. Further discussion?
Can I give that number just one more time, make sure I have it correct? The 8
Yeah,
million.
8,210,619.
34 cents.
34. Yep. Thanks.
Any discussion on the proposed 2% cut?
Only thing, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
the Board of Selectmen will have a list for you at the deliberative session where those reductions will come from what the original budget was. In case, so when people ask, you'll have it and the Board of Selectmen will have it.
Okay. All right, we will call it to a vote. And again, this is on the changing of the bottom line to 8,210,619.34. Mr. Wentworth,
Yes.
Mr. Hershey,
No.
Mr. Parker,
Yes.
Ms. Karatonov,
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien, yes. Votes in the affirmative. Again, I want to reiterate coming out on the other side of this vote that it is dreadfully unfortunate that we had to get to the end to make this decision. I really wish there was a lot more conversation along the way. It truly pains me to make the decision to make a 2% cut without knowing where it's coming from. But in the interest of providing a recommended budget to the tax people who elected all of us to sit on these boards, that's why I'm making this decision.
I agree.
Okay, I guess at this point, shall I reread the article with the updated number, or are we okay with just updating the number and voting for our recommendation?
Combined with voting for the recommendation, sir.
I will make a motion that we recommend Article B with the updated number of $8,210,619.34.
I thought we just voted on that.
Yeah. Voted on the
That's
dollar,
done.
the dollar amount.
Next article.
I'm confused, because my motion was,
Change what's on there.
That we recommend.
Budget with a 2% increase, making the bottom line 8,210,619.34.
Correct.
That was,
Right.
that's right.
Brock made the motion, right? Ruben seconded it? Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody else except for one said yes.
That motion was in reference to changing the bottom line of the budget. This is whether or not we recommend the town operating budget.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
So Article B as amended to the $8,210,619.34 being the new bottom line. I will make that motion that we recommend.
I will second.
Second by Mr. Parker. Further discussion? I'll call to a vote. Mr. Wentworth,
Yes.
Mr. Hershey,
Yes.
Mr. Parker,
Yes.
Ms. Karatonoff,
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien, yes. Thank you all. Article C, Waterworks operating budget, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $475,000 or $475,042 for the operation and maintenance of the water distribution system for the ensuing year. Said sum is to be offset by the user's fees. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $507,884, which is the same as last year with certain adjustments requiring previous action of the town or by law. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 3-0 with 1 abstain. Majority vote is required. Does anybody else wish to revisit the vote on this article?
No.
Does anybody else want to read Article D?
I'll read it for you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
Fire Department Equipment Capital Reserve Fund, see if the town will vote and raise and appropriate the sum of $430,000 to be added to the Fire Department Equipment Capital Reserve Fund as previously established in 1973. $150,000 will come from the unassigned fund balance, which means it will not be raised by general taxation. And will not affect the tax rate. The remaining $280,000 will be raised from general taxation recommended by the Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0.
Is anybody interested in re-voting on this article? Article E, Grounds and Maintenance Vehicle Capital Reserve Fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $15,000 to be added to the Grounds and Maintenance Vehicle Capital Reserve Fund as previously established in 2019. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Does anybody wish to re-vote on Article E? Article F, Highway Department Equipment Capital Reserve Fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $350,000 to be added to the Highway Department Equipment Capital Reserve Fund as previously established in 1981. Recommended by the Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Majority vote is required. Does anybody wish to re-vote on Article F?
No.
Article G, Highway Road Construction Capital Reserve Fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $950,000 to be added to the Highway Construction Capital Reserve Fund, as previously established in 1998. Said amount is partially offset by revenues from the Highway Block Grant Fund, estimated to be $191,000. This is an annual appropriation that provides for the reconstruction of existing roadways. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Majority vote is required, recommended by CIP. Does anybody wish to revote on G?
No.
Article H, Bridge Construction Capital Reserve Fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to be added to the Bridge Construction Capital Reserve Fund, as previously established in 1995. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Majority vote is required, recommended by CIP. Does anybody wish to revote on Article H?
Nope.
Article I, Highway Building Improvement Repairs Capital Reserve Fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $20,000 to be added to the Highway Building Improvement Repairs Capital Reserve Fund, as previously established in 2014. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Majority vote is required, recommended by CIP. Anybody wish to revote? Aye. Article J, Rock and Asphalt Crushing Capital Reserve, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $30,000 to be added to the Rock and Asphalt Crushing Capital Reserve Fund, as previously established in 2017. Said funds are to come from the unassigned fund balance. There will be no funds raised from general taxation. This will not affect the tax rate. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Majority vote is required. Anybody wish to read the vote on J?
No.
Article K, Highway Sand Shed Capital Reserve Fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to be added to the Highway Sand Shed Capital Reserve Fund, as previously established in 2003. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Majority vote required, recommended by CIP. Does anybody wish to revote on Article K?
No, but I have a question. Since we kind of went through all these last week, should we just be rereading the ones that we had a tie vote on? I mean, I'm puzzled as to why we're rereading these and giving everybody a chance to revote.
Yeah, in case you wanted to change it based on public input.
But they had that chance to the public hearing originally from the town hearing. And you shut off public input, you shut the public hearing down now, and all these were made available, correct, to the public if they wanted it?
Is there maybe another way of looking at that and asking the board if, after having public input, are there any of these articles that we wish to revisit and change? And if the answer is no, we're done.
I don't have an answer for you on that. I was always under an impression that every single money warrant article had to be divulged.
We did last week.
No, tonight.
Oh, okay.
If the place was open to the public, then they wouldn't have to read them, correct?
No, I think they, yeah.
No,
I don't.
Right, before.
Well, that's right.
Roger always used to,
Did he?
yeah,
I'll have to ask him tomorrow.
yeah.
Article L, Highway Sidewalk Capital Reserve Fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 to be added to the Highway Sidewalk Capital Reserve Fund, as previously established. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Majority vote required, recommended by CIP. Does anybody wish to revote on Article L? Article M, IT Capital Reserve Fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $3,000 to be added to the IT Capital Reserve Fund, as previously established in 2020. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Majority vote required. Does anybody wish to revote on Article M? Article N, Alton Bay Community Center Property Capital Reserve Fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the amount of $15,000 to be added to the Alton Bay Community Center Property Capital Reserve Fund, as previously established in 2020. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Majority vote required, recommended by CIP. Anybody wish to reevaluate N? Article O, Mount Major Community Center Property Capital Reserve Fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the amount of $1,000 to be added to the Mount Major Community Center Property Capital Reserve Fund, as previously established in 2017. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 3-1. The majority vote is required. Does anybody wish to reevaluate Article O?
No.
Article P, Retaining Wall Capital Reserve Fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the amount of $75,000 to be added to the Retaining Wall Capital Reserve Fund as previously established in 2018. Said funds are to come from the unassigned fund balance. There will be no funds raised from general taxation. This will not affect the tax rate. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Majority vote is required. Anybody wish to reevaluate Article P?
No.
Article Q, Police Detail Revolving Fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $25,000 to be added to the Police Detail Revolving Fund established in 2016 and amended in 2018. Said funds to be added to this fund came from the sale of the police Humvee, which has been deposited into the general fund, awaiting transfer into the Police Detail Revolving Fund in accordance with instructions from DRA. Said funds are to come from the unassigned fund balance. There will be no funds raised from general taxation. This will not affect the tax rate. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 4-1, recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Majority vote is required. Does anybody wish to reevaluate Article Q?
No.
Article R, Traffic Safety Devices, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $100,650 for the purpose of purchasing 12 solar-powered rectangular rapid flashing beacon pedestrian crossing signals and one solar-powered driver feedback speed sign to be used as permanent traffic and pedestrian safety measures throughout Main Street in the Bay Area. Said funds are to come from the unassigned fund balance. There will be no funds raised from general taxation. This will not affect the tax rate. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 3-1. Majority vote is required. Does anybody wish to reevaluate Article R? Article S, Police Department Radios, to see if the town will vote to authorize the Selectmen to raise and appropriate $75,000 use for the purpose of purchasing 13 Motorola portable radios and 5 Motorola mobile radios to be used by the police department. Said funds are to come from the unassigned fund balance. There will be no funds raised from general taxation. This will not affect the tax rate. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Majority vote is required. Does anybody wish to reevaluate Article S? Article T, 2021 Emergency Management Related Expenses. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $40,000 to be used for 2021 unanticipated emergency management related expenses. Said funds are to come from the unassigned fund balance. There will be no funds raised from general taxation. This will affect the tax rate. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Majority vote is required. Does anybody wish to reevaluate Article T? Article U, Milfoil Capital Reserve Fund, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $25,000 to be added to the Milfoil Capital Reserve Fund as previously established in 2010. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Majority vote is required. Does anybody wish to reevaluate Article U? Article V, Recycling Revolving Fund Change of Purpose.
Mr. Chairman, you
Yes,
can
sir.
pass over that. That doesn't
yes.
involve.
Yep, change of purpose. Got it. Article W, to see if, or Town Hall Building Improvements Capital Reserve Fund, thanks for catching me, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $14,000 to be added to the Town Hall Building Improvements Capital Reserve Fund as previously established in 2011. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 4-1, recommended by the Budget Committee 4-0. Majority vote required, recommended by CIP. Anybody wish to reevaluate Article W? Article X, Water Main Expense Capital Reserve Fund Interest. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $522.80 to be added to the Water Main Expense Capital Reserve Fund created in 2020. These funds were remaining interest left after closing the Alton Waterworks Transmission Line Extension Capital Reserve Fund and Alton Waterworks Transmission Line Replacement Capital Reserve Fund in March of 2020. Said funds are to come from the unassigned fund balance. There will be no funds raised from general taxation. This will not affect the tax rate. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen, 5-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee. We are now down to Article Z, Alton Community Services Nonprofit. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $12,500 for the purpose of supporting Alton Community Services, which provides a food pantry and assistance programs for fuel, prescriptions, utilities, and housing in close coordination with the Alton Welfare Department. This is a special warrant article recommended by the Board of Selectmen, 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee, 4-0. A majority vote is required. Does anybody wish to reevaluate Article Z?
Yes, sir.
Was that a no?
Oh, I'm sorry.
For
No, I'm
clarity?
sorry. I was one ahead of you. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. Article AA, American Red Cross Nonprofit, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,000 for the purpose of supporting the American Red Cross, which provides disaster relief, shelters, basic household necessities, and counseling. This is a special warrant article recommended by the Board of Selectmen, 4-1, not recommended by the Budget Committee, 2-2. Majority vote is required. Does anybody wish to reevaluate Article AA?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We will call our recommendation, or we'll revote on our recommendation.
Well, at least I feel that way. I don't know about the rest of the board, so.
Why don't we just do a new vote in the event that that may have changed?
Okay, yep, that's fine by me if somebody wants to make the motion.
So move, Mr. Chairman, on Article AA.
Second.
Yes.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Wentworth, second by Mr. Parker, to recommend Article AA, American Red Cross Nonprofit. Is there further discussion on this article? We'll call it to a vote. Mr. Wentworth,
Yes.
Mr. Hershey,
No.
Mr. Parker,
Yes.
Ms. Karatonov,
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yep.
Mr. O'Brien, yes. I believe that is, yes. Any further discussion on AA? Article B, CAP, nonprofit. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 for the purpose of supporting the Community Action Program, which provides supplemental food, fuel, utility transportation, Meals on Wheels, weatherization assistance, and Women, Infants, and Children Food Assistance Program. This is a special warrant article. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen, 5-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee, 4-0. Majority vote is required. Anybody wish to reevaluate Article BB?
No.
Article CC, Caregivers of Southern Carroll County and Vicinity Nonprofit. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,500 for the purpose of supporting Caregivers of Southern Carroll County and Vicinity, Inc., includes Alton, which provides free transportation to handicapped, elderly, and other residents needing assistance with all these services provided by volunteers. This is a special warrant article recommended by the Board of Selectmen, 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee, 4-0. Does anybody wish to reevaluate Article CC?
No.
Article DD, CASA nonprofit, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $500 for the purpose of supporting CASA, Court-Appointed Special Advocates, which provides advocacy for abused and neglected children. This is a special warrant article recommended by the Board of Selectmen, 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee, 3-1. Majority vote is required. Does anybody wish to reevaluate Article DD?
No.
Article EE, Central New Hampshire VNA and Hospice Nonprofit. to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $12,000 for the purpose of supporting Central New Hampshire VNA and Hospice, which is a nonprofit agency that provides healthcare, hospice care, and maternal child health services. This is a special warrant article recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0 and recommended by the Budget Committee 3-1. Majority vote is required. Does anybody wish to reevaluate Article EE?
No, but I have a question on that. I'm kind of surprised that, you know, we're voting on a $12,000 or have voted on a $12,000 contribution without even knowing what the profits are. Well, it's a not-for-profit, I get that. What their cash flow is. I mean, if they're, you know, they're paying their bills, they're getting the money, you know, is $12,000 necessary? So, you know, and we don't have, I don't think we have an answer to that. I just throw that out there for consideration next year when this comes up.
You might have an answer in your backup that they provided, the thick, it what? It was in there. It was in there, okay.
Yeah, and it still ends up, it's a not-for-profit organization, and they're making ends meet. So
They provided one to the Board of Selectmen, did they not? All the materials and everything?
Yep.
So that's not all in their packet though, was it? Was it?
They had.
Yeah, it was substantial. Okay.
All of this. Right?
Yeah, okay, I just wanted to make sure.
About an inch thick, yeah.
Any further discussion on EE? Article FF, Lakes Region Mental Health Nonprofit, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $15,750 for the purpose of supporting the Lakes Region Mental Health Center, which provides mental health care to area residents, services for children, elders, along with other emergency services. This is a special warrant article not recommended by the Board of Selectmen 4-1, and we need to make a recommendation on this, judging by my form here. A majority vote is required.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we recommend Article FF.
Second that.
Motion by Mrs. Karatonoff, second by Mr. Parker. Further discussion on Article FF.
Yes.
Don't shoot the messenger when we vote. No, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
We'll call it to.
Yep, Lakes Region Mental Health is owned by Genesis Corporation, a $42 billion company, okay? In the discussion this evening, their services are reimbursable, okay? Sometimes it takes creative, you know, working, okay? But for anybody that is not covered by healthcare, there's the Affordable Care Act, okay, which is mandatory, and there's also Medicaid. The services, okay, are, once you qualify for Medicaid, are retroactive from the date of the application, okay? So if Lakes Region Mental Health Genesis Corporation, okay, provides services for somebody, they can fill out the application on behalf of the patient, okay? Submit it to Medicaid and then get a retroactive reimbursement. So now if somebody ends up requiring extensive medical care, and I'll just use a random number of $20,000. Okay, I'm picking that out of a hat. Okay, they have the ability, okay, to fill out an application for coverage under the Affordable Care Act because maybe the person doesn't qualify for Medicaid. Not a problem. Okay, it would make prudent business decision if you're a Genesis Corporation to pay 2 or 3 or 4 months worth of Affordable Care Act insurance premium for the purposes of getting your medical care reimbursed, okay, under the Affordable Care Act, okay? So with these solutions that are available, I'm puzzled by the need for $15,750. I'm not suggesting for a second these services are not beneficial to the community, okay? I get it, okay? I understand it exceptionally well, okay? And I can't emphasize enough, okay, the need for the services they provide, okay? But for a machine like this, okay, I don't understand why, you know, there's a need for a request for municipalities to pass that allocation on to the taxpayer for something that is, got a system in place already for reimbursements.
Mr. Chairman, I have a comment.
Yes.
We received extensive public input in support of this article this evening. And when Ann Nichols, representative of Lakes Region Mental Health, tells us that they cannot recover all of the expenses that they have, I have no reason not to believe her. I'm not sure that Mr. Hershey has all the information available to him regarding what obstacles there are to recovering those funds. And I believe that they are providing really what it ends up being a charitable contribution to our community because all of the services are not reimbursed.
If you recall, I'm sorry. Sorry, Karen, I thought you were done. I didn't mean to cut you off. If you recall, the last words that she said, okay, was of course, okay? Meaning that was the answer to my question in terms of qualifying these people and filling out applications under the coverage for the Affordable Care Act. So following your words, okay, yes, I think she's extremely versed in that, okay, and gave us the answer. So yes, not everybody is eligible for Medicaid. Everybody is required, okay, to have health care coverage, okay, whether it be private or through the Affordable Care Act. So.
That's
and
not
those
correct, exactly. That's not exactly correct. But I would just stand by what Ms. Nichols said, and with the understanding that they may not have the resources to go through that process. And if they're telling us that they are not reimbursed for all of the cases that they serve in our community, then I have no reason not to believe her.
Right, and they're not reimbursed because they don't always submit the application, which is a kind of it's a laborious process, okay, which many companies undertake, okay, and the reimbursement is sometimes, 90 or 120 days later, okay. Yep, I get it. It's uncomfortable. It's an administrative burden, but that's life within the industry in which they operate their business. So.
And again, I'd rather have them spend their instead of spending more administrative funds to tackle those obstacles, I'd rather have them focus their funds on supporting mental health in our community.
But they have the people on staff that do that. It's called a social worker. Requirement under law that they have those people on staff. It's the social worker that would fill out the applications with or on behalf of the patient.
I don't have the details of what they do and what they don't have, but I support this article because I think it's important to have that service in our community.
At this point, we'll just call it to a vote. Mr. Wentworth?
No.
Mr. Hershey?
No.
Mr. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Karatonov?
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien, yes. Article FF, Life Ministries Nonprofit.
GG.
Oh, sorry, GG, yes. Article GG, to see if Life Ministries. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $3,000 for the purpose of supporting Life Ministries, Inc., which is a not-for-profit charity that provides food staples to Alton residents. This is a special warrant article. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 3-1. Does anybody wish to reevaluate GG?
Nope.
Article HH, New Beginnings Nonprofit, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,575 for the purpose of supporting New Beginnings, which provides 24-hour crisis support for domestic/sexual assault victims, operates a shelter, and provides counseling. This is a special warrant article. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 3-1. Majority vote is required. Does anybody wish to reevaluate HH?
No.
Article II, Waypoint Nonprofit, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,500 for the purpose of supporting Waypoint, formerly known as Child and Family Services of New Hampshire. This is a special warrant article recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 3-1. Does anybody wish to reevaluate? Aye.
No.
Article JJ, reports of committee, oh, no, we don't need to do that one. I don't believe we have any more. The rest are petition non-money articles. Okay. With that being said, does anybody have any other business for the good of this board? I realize it's a late night. I appreciate all of your time and effort in putting this budget together.
Mr. Chairman, Carolyn here. There was on the agenda approval of water operating budget. Did that get taken care of, or
Yeah, I thought it was through the warrant article.
that was just through the warrant article? Okay. Thank you. No other questions.
Thank you. We have to get you your own mic, Carolyn.
I can talk real loud if I need to.
All right. Any other business for the good of the board? Hearing or seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Wentworth, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Mitchell. Those in favor, Mr. Wentworth,
Yes.
Mr. Hershey,
Yes.
Mr. Parker,
Yes.
Ms. Karatonoff,
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien, yes. Thank you all and have a good night.
Okay, take care.
Thank you.
Good night.